Depending on who you ask, Blackbeard is the most intriguing villain in all of One Piece outside of Emu. You can guarantee that he will cause a lot of chaos. Chaos that everybody in the story will feel. Walk with me. And today we are ranking Blackbeard. It is Blackbeard's week, okay? We are ranking the warlords currently on my channel, and it's Blackbeard. So I'm so excited about this. Blackbeard's story is so interesting, okay? But I also like to drop a theory video that coincides with that warlord of that week, and Blackbeard has some of the best theories in One Piece. So I'm really excited, so go check that out on Friday. But let's get into this ranking. And let's start with Blackbeard's basic stats. Marshall D. Teach is currently 40 years old, standing at 344 centimeters tall, or 11 feet 3 inches. Currently one of the 4 Emperors of the Sea, captain of the Blackbeard Pirates. Born August 3rd on Shady Port on an island somewhere on the Grand Line, a Davy clan member and a D clan member, with an outrageous bounty of 3,996,000,000 berries, and is the current user of 2 broken devil fruits. The first being the Yami Yami no Mi, or the dark fruit, a Logia type that allows the user to conjure up and become darkness, making them the darkness human. The darkness has a gravity effect that stores anything that enters, sort of like a black hole. He even has a move called Black Hole. And this devil fruit also has one of the scariest abilities in the story, and it's forcing others to not be able to use their own devil fruit. And the second one is the Gura Gura no Mi, or the Quake fruit, a paramecia type which allows the users to create tremors. This fruit is often referred to as the devil fruit that can destroy the world, and is also considered the strongest in the paramecia class, being the only person in the story with 2 devil fruits that we know of right now. And already those were some interesting stats. Like I said, Blackbeard's story just keeps getting better and better. So let's move on to Blackbeard's basic timeline in the story of One Piece. Being born 40 years ago in Shady Port, to the mother Eris, and to the father, the esteemed legend of the sea, Rox D. Zebek. And to protect his family, he sent them to live on God Valley, his homeland, with the rest of the Davy clan. 2 years later, God Valley was chosen as the island of the World Nobles native hunting competition, where Blackbeard and his mother were captured and forced to be targets in this inhumane competition. But soon after the game starts, Rox arrives and saves his family, but they are soon separated again because they are currently being chased down by Holy Knights. And Eris tells Rox that she will meet him on the Louisia after this competition is over. But soon after the reunion, Rox is Domi reversied by Emu and is forced to go after his own family, his wife and child. But soon the two run into Bartholomew Kuma, who uses his paw fruit to send them away from the nightmare that is God Valley, sending them away to an unknown island. But soon after this, Blackbeard would grow up an orphan, as his father died on God Valley and his mother also passed away for unknown circumstances. And as a child, he finds a devil fruit encyclopedia, where he learns about the Yami Yami no Mi and became obsessed with finding it. Now, 28 years ago, at the age of 12, Blackbeard encounters Whitebeard's crew and begs Whitebeard to join them, as this would give Blackbeard a better chance at finding the Yami Yami no Mi. And at the age of 14, the Whitebeard Pirates and the Roger Pirates would go on to clash for 3 days and 3 nights. And this is where Blackbeard meets Buggy and Shanks, and we also learn the rumor that Blackbeard never sleeps and hasn't slept a day in his life. But he and the rest of the Whitebeard Pirates go on to do piratey things, even managing to claim Fishman Island as their own territory. And at some point around 15 years before the present day in One Piece, Blackbeard and Shanks clash, giving Shanks his iconic 3 scars on his eye. And not too long after this, he became a member of the 2nd Division on Whitebeard's crew and encouraged Ace, Porcus D. Ace, to go for the commander position, which Blackbeard actually turned down, saying that he just doesn't have that ambition. Remember, he's only here for the Yami Yami no Mi. Now, 2 years ago, the commander of the Whitebeard pirates at the time, Thatch, found the infamous Yami Yami no Mi, and desperate to finally get his hands on his lifelong dream, he murders Thatch and leaves the Blackbeard pirates without anybody noticing. But Ace soon finds this out and sets out to find Blackbeard to get revenge on him for his betrayal. And soon after eating this devil fruit, he acquires the name Blackbeard, forming his own crew with members like Lafitte, Van Augur, Jesus Burgess, Dot Q, and Stronger, where they soon attack Drum Island and unironically liberating Drum Island before Luffy did, because Wapol is a bad king. He disappears and comes back when Luffy's there, blah blah blah. And they continued on to Jaya, where Lafitte actually goes and infiltrates Marijois, nominating his captain as a warlord, which they declined for the lack of clout. Now back on Jaya, Blackbeard is in a bar enjoying some cherry pie. Now, I've never heard of a bar having cherry pie, but I mean, hey, it is what it is. This is where Blackbeard officially meets Luffy, where the two argue over food and it almost comes to blows.
I think there may be something wrong with your taste buds, kid.
I think there's something wrong with your big fat head.
Is stopped by the barkeep, where Blackbeard makes his way outside of the tavern. And Luffy also soon comes out of the bar, and Blackbeard goes on to tell him that Sky Island does exist. And this is where we get that iconic speech from Blackbeard about pirates and how their dreams never end.
あいつらの言う新時代ってのはクソだ。海賊が夢を見る時代が終わるって？え？おい！なんだ？人の夢は終わらねえ!
The Straw Hat Pirates walk away, but referring to Blackbeard as they. Very strange, very, very, very strange. This put Blackbeard on the map as a candidate to look out for. He grows more over time as one of the most iconic villains, but this really puts him on the map. But soon after this, he is made aware of Luffy's 100 million berry bounty and Zoro's 60 million berry bounty, and he begins to intercept them as they are taking off in a knockup stream to Sky Island, with Blackbeard's ship destroyed in the process, laughing and saying they will meet again one day. Now we're jumping over to the events of Enies Lobby, where Blackbeard and his crew end up on Pavarno Island and end up reading the latest newspaper, concluding that Luffy's bounty will go up due to recent events, with plans underway into go killing Luffy and collecting that delicious bounty. And as the crew is packing up, beginning to leave this island, Porcus D. Ace shows up, and him and Blackbeard have an exchange of words that go back and forth, Blackbeard even offering Ace a spot on his crew, telling Ace that he wants to go kill Luffy, but Ace obviously refuses, as that is his brother, and the two go on to clash. And during this clash, Blackbeard comes clean about killing Thatch and his true intentions on Whitebeard's crew, and the two go on to continue to clash with respective moves like Black Hole from Teach and Hararubi from Ace. However, Blackbeard ends up winning this clash, and this event will go on to be called the Duel on Bonarvo Island, handing Ace over to the Marines, and this is where Blackbeard finally becomes a warlord. And during the events of Amazon Lily, He answers the call to the world government on an impending war that is about to happen between the world government and the Whitebeard pirates. Arriving at Marijois in a few hours before Ace's execution, Blackbeard begins to initiate his true plan. Him and his crew end up stealing a marine ship, making their way to Impel Down, where he manages to get in rather easy as Luffy and company are currently causing a riot in the prison, and he manages to take out the vice warden Hannibal. And this is where he meets Luffy again, where he tells Luffy about the details of Ace's execution. The two begin to clash, but is soon ended by Jinbei.
Come! Black Vortex!
And Magellan arrives and he manages to poison the entire Blackbeard crew, later being saved by Shiryu, the ex-warden of Impel Down, inviting him to join his crew, where he accepts. Finally making it down to level 6, where he tells the prisoners that they'd have to fight to the death if they want to escape and join him, resulting in San Juan Wolf, Avalo Pizarro, Vasco Shot, and Katarina Devon to join his crew. They leave the prison, making their way back to Marineford. And at the end of the war, the Blackbeard pirates arrive once more, where Blackbeard reveals his true plan on becoming a warlord so he could break into Impel Down and get more legends on his crew, where he effectively resigns as warlord right then and there. So Blackbeard and Whitebeard end up clashing, and soon after this, the whole Blackbeard crew, including Blackbeard himself, send clips inside of Whitebeard's body. But Whitebeard has a few last words for Blackbeard, telling Blackbeard that he is not the one Roger was waiting for, as he's not Joy Boy. That's really what it boils down to. Going on to say the One Piece is real.
The One Piece! The One Piece is real!
Dying standing straight up. This is a legendary moment, not only for Blackbeard because that was his ex-captain. Not only that, Whitebeard was a respected pirate among the seas, okay? He was an emperor, he was a part of the Rocks pirates, he was just a legend of the sea. Blackbeard and his crew killed him. Blackbeard's crew ends up covering Whitebeard's dead body in a black cloth, where Blackbeard enters under the black cloth, soon emerging with the power of the Gura Gura no Mi. Blackbeard's second devil fruit, and he goes on to say that this is his era from this day forward. This moment is the moment. I know I said back on Jaya that's where he was put on the map, and that is true, but this is where you sit up in your seat. You have to respect it. In the story, there's no one else that is said to be able to eat multiple devil fruits. If you eat 2 devil fruits, you die, blah blah blah. But Blackbeard has conquered the impossible. This is where Blackbeard became a legend, in my eyes at least. He goes on to attempt to sink Marineford with his newfound power, rage baiting Son Goku and GARP, and quickly making an escape as Shanks shows up. And after the war, Blackbeard and his crew are seen on a burning island where they capture Jewelry Bonnie, planning to trade her for a marine ship, but Akainu was there, so they make haste and escape, leaving Bonnie and the unnamed island. And during the time skip 1 year after the war, the Blackbeard pirates go on to fight the remaining members of the Whitebeard pirates, and this event is called the Payback War. But ultimately, Blackbeard wins this war, and this is the event that made him one of 4 Emperors of the Sea. And he goes on to conquer most of Whitebeard's territory, growing his crew into a fleet, naming his ship the Saber of Zebek, honoring his father. And soon after this, the crew goes on to hunt down powerful devil fruit users, killing them and taking the fruits for themselves. And at some point, the crew encounters Kuzan, and Kuzan goes on to freeze most of the Blackbeard pirates. The two briefly clash before sitting down and having a drink, and they actually have a good conversation. And Blackbeard invites Kuzan to be a part of his crew. Though reluctant at first, he eventually gives in and joins the crew. And around this time, he is also taking in other crews, taking in Brownbeard. Who cares? I mean, I just felt like I had to add that here. I don't know. And around this time, Blackbeard and Law took part in what will be known as the Rocky Port incident. And Blackbeard goes on to clash with an ex-member of the Rocks Pirates, Ochoku, at that time held control over Hachinosu. But Blackbeard won this battle as well, with the help of Law and Kobe, and he becomes the new head of Hachinosu, Beehive Island. And during the events of Dressrosa, he finds out that Doflamingo got his hands on the Mera no Mi, the Flame fruit, which was Ace's fruit after he died, and is planning to give it away to whoever wins the Gladiator tournament. So he sends Jesus Burgess to Dressrosa in an attempt to win this devil fruit, and on Dressrosa he has a fall via Dendenmushi and rage baits Luffy during this call. And during the Zhao arc, the Blackbeard pirates go on to attack Baltico, which is the stronghold of the Revolutionary Army, and somehow coming out of that unscathed. Now, during the Wano incident, Moria shows up to Hachinosu in search of his first mate, Absalon, where he offers Moria a chance to join his crew. But Moria rejects, being sent to a prison on Hachinosu. And not too long after this, he hears the news that the Warlord system has been abolished, and immediately makes his way to Amazon Lily to steal Boa Hancock's devil fruit, the Moro no Mi. I have a great theory video about this. It's very underrated in my opinion. Go check it out. Why Blackbeard was trying to take this devil fruit. It's a good theory. Go check it out. But just as he is about to kill Boa Hancock, Ray Lee appears. But before he escapes Amazon Lily, he takes a marine ship with 800 Marines on board. But Kobe steps in, offering himself up instead of the 800 Marines, making their way back to Hachinosu. And this is where Kobe is in the same prison as Moria, and later comes up with the idea of blackmailing the world government in order for him to become king of Hachinosu. He wants to be recognized as a king. But Kobe is a part of Sword, where Blackbeard finds out about this, and Kuzan just suggests that it's just not a good idea. But Blackbeard plans to keep these plans in action, as Kobe is a great marine and they could definitely use some type of leverage. He goes on to send Van Augur and Kuzan to Totoland to kidnap Charlotte Pudding, and they do it successfully. And during the events of Egghead, Blackbeard and a few of his crewmates end up on Winter Island, where Blackbeard goes on to clash with Trafalgar Law. And the winner will take it all. And by all, it's just the rubbings of the poneglyphs. And the two go on to have a legendary battle. Law just coming off of defeating Big Mom. And this was the biggest fight we've seen of Blackbeard this far. So it was an engaging moment for sure. Ultimately, Blackbeard wins this battle. utterly destroying the Heart Pirates, with the plans of killing Law and taking his devil fruit. That's another broken devil fruit. But Law is saved in the nick of time by Beppo, and later on, not too long after this, is seen listening to Vegapunk's message, full bricked up. Like I'm saying, this guy smiles in the face of chaos, and the Vegapunk message just was like everything for him. And he agrees to meet Caribou. And currently, during the Elbaf arc, Blackbeard made his way back to Hachinosu, where he finds out what happened here on Hachinosu with Kobe and GARP, Kuzan. It's a mess, but he's excited because now instead of Kobe, they have GARP, the legend of the Marines. The plans of him becoming a king now have great potential. He goes on to have a phone call with Lafitte, who is currently keeping an eye out on the Revs. And during this phone call, he goes on to tell Lafitte to be ready, as he is ready to put a plan into action. And this is the last we see of Blackbeard in the story of One Piece as of right now, as of 1182. But before I get into my ranking and my predictions of Blackbeard, I want to just give my thoughts on Blackbeard here for a second. Blackbeard is your classic old school villain. The most chaotic situation could be happening and he's just there menacingly laughing. He's not attractive like most modern villains are. They kind of have this like soft boy look. Most of newer aged animes. Blackbeard is the complete opposite of that. You know, someone said I looked like a cleaned up version of Blackbeard, and you know, hey, I mean, it is what it is, you know. I guess I look like a cleaned up version of Blackbeard. But, and that's not to say if you're attracted to Blackbeard, please, it's all you. You know what I'm saying? But like, I don't know. But comparing Blackbeard to your modern day villain, it's impossible. You feel that aura from Blackbeard. That evil, sick, and twisted presence is very, very overwhelming. His story is beyond calculated. Every move is on purpose. And if it fails, move right on to the next. And everything he is aiming for is very understandable. Knowing his full story, you almost want to root for Blackbeard. Both of his parents dying to the world government, well, a situation that happens with the world government, because we really don't know how his mother died, but I'm guessing it's probably to do with that. As of right now, I would say he's one of the best written characters in One Piece, because it's not just, oh, Blackbeard, he's a bad guy, whatever. No, his story is very well thought out and written very pristine, and it just makes him an all-around good villain, in my opinion. And honestly, I kind of want Blackbeard to succeed. Okay, I want to see his final plan. I want to see what he's going to do. But I mean, Luffy's here to stop it all, so we might see it. But you know, Luffy, there's not much you can do against the warrior of liberation. There's just not. Now let's move on to my Blackbeard predictions. Now let's just put it out there. We will see Blackbeard again. Obviously, he is one of the final main villains. And whatever he is planning with what we just last seen with Lafitte will be one of the final stages in his overall plan. And my next prediction is he will succeed. In whatever plan he has, he will succeed to an extent, okay? Because he's not going to defeat Luffy. He might hurt Luffy and beat Luffy maybe once, okay? Like run it back type situation. But at the end of the story, he won't succeed. It is what it is. But my biggest prediction for Blackbeard is that he will kill one of the Straw Hats. Outside of like Buggy and Alvida and some other pirates, you know, he's one of the longest running pirates in the show that want Luffy's head, okay? And what's the next best thing? Not being able to defeat Luffy? One of his beloved crewmates. Now, okay, we could step back and say he might really hurt one of the Straw Hats, maybe not kill him, but it would grow his character. I don't want to see my Straw Hats die. I don't. That's not what I'm saying here, but I feel like I could see it happening. And I'm going to give Blackbeard the solid rating of S. Okay, I just am. He is so woven throughout the story. He was at many of these iconic events, even having taken part in Marineford in the killing of Whitebeard, a legend of the sea. I think a solid S fits Blackbeard so well, and it's not even, his plan hasn't even started. We're gonna get like a mini Blackbeard arc about what he's been doing throughout the story. I can feel it, I can see it. So Blackbeard's story has only just begun for us, in my opinion. We'll see a lot more of Blackbeard in the future, but I want to know your thoughts. Where would you rank Blackbeard on this ranking list, and what are your thoughts on Blackbeard? How does Blackbeard make you feel? On Friday, you will get a Blackbeard theory video, and I'm so excited about this because I already have a bunch of Blackbeard theory videos out there, but this one is going to be a few theories in one video, as I like to drop a theory video with that Warlord of that week, and it's Blackbeard's week, so we're celebrating. I'm so excited. I'm excited. Arguably one of the greatest villains in One Piece of all time. Someone who had a hand in every industry in the One Piece world, committing one of the best coup de grace the story has ever seen. Not to mention one of the most successful villains in the story. Walk with me. Hello, motherfuckers. Welcome to the motherfucking channel. Today, can you tell? Hello. Today we will be getting into my ranking for Doflamingo. If you're new here, we've been ranking the warlords on my channel. This is the finale. Well, the finale ranking, because I like to drop a theory video that coincides with that warlord of that week. So I guess Doflamingo's theory video will be the finale of this series. I'm so excited for Doflamingo. I love Doflamingo. He is my favorite warlord. He's one of my favorite characters in One Piece. So let's just get into this. So let's start with Doflamingo's basic stats. Currently 41 years old. Born October 23rd, standing at 305 centimeters or 10 feet tall. Born on the Red Line in Marijua as a world noble with a frozen bounty of 340 million berries. I personally, this should be bigger. I don't know. I mean, maybe we will get an updated Doflamingo bounty sometime in the future, but hey, one of the first characters confirmed to have Conqueror's Haki, and also is the current user of the Ito Ito no Mi, or the string fruit, a paramecia type allowing the user to become a string man and can create clones of himself with the string and can manipulate others with the string, sort of like a puppet. Icon, legend, hello. He has also awakened this devil fruit, and he's just one of those people in One Piece that has completely mastered their devil fruit, and I stand. Hello. Okay, now let's get into the basic timeline for Doflamingo. Born 41 years ago on the Red Line to the father Don Quixote Homing, a member of the Don Quixotes, and this is one of the original 20 families that created the world government back in the Void Century era. And at the age of 8, Doflamingo's father decides to cease being a world noble, instead deciding to leave Marijua and go live life with the subhumans on on the One Piece planet. So they would move to an unnamed northern country of the world, but Doflamingo was accustomed to his pampered life, and when he got down there, it was nothing like that. But as we all know, the normal people of the One Piece world hate the world nobles, and the fact that they renounced themselves made the people of this northern country way easier to persecute the Don Quixote family, burning down their mansion and pushing the family to go live in a junkyard in a makeshift shack, forcing the family to eat out of the garbage. Homing then thinks it's a good idea to go ask the world nobles for help, but they reject, as he did leave them. I mean, it makes sense. Fuck homie. And soon after this, his mother dies from an illness and pure shock. Eventually, the commoners that burned down their mansion ended up tracking down the family. Unable to contain their anger, they go on to attack the family. And this event would never leave Doflamingo's mind, blaming his bitch ass dad for everything that he has put this family through. And at some point, Doflamingo met Virgo, Treble, and Diamante, who see Doflamingo using Conqueror's Haki to knock out the mob that was attacking them, where the three soon give Doflamingo the Ito no Mi, and a pistol to exact revenge on whoever Doflamingo sees fit. And at the and takes his head back to Marijois. This little nigga is crazy, okay? In an attempt to regain some of his world noble status, but is turned away, deeming his family as a group of traitors. And he manages to escape, saying that he'll kill everybody eventually, and escaping Marijois with the knowledge of a national treasure that this faction of the world has, where he uses this info to blackmail them into giving him the freedom he once had before his bitch ass dad decided to stop being a world noble. And soon after this, he returns to the northern island, where Treble, Pika, Diamante, and Virgo swear their allegiance to Doflamingo, promising him that he will be the next pirate king, going as far as to burning down an entire town, all because they had bad pavement and Doflamingo tripped. Legend. That's how you treat a king, nigga. Fuck. And now, jumping forward to the age of 17, Doflamingo was there to witness Roger's execution, smiling at the event. Once again, legend. I love my villains that are fucking villains for a reason. You know, they're just evil chaos for no reason. And at the age of 24, he reunites with his mute brother after 14 years apart, assuming he is mute because of some traumatic event that he went through. And a year after this, Doflamingo sends Virgo to infiltrate the Marines, eventually becoming a vice admiral. This is giving Doflamingo a hand in the world government. And at the age of 25, Doflamingo encounters a young child named Trafalgar D. Waterlaw in the North Blue at a port town called Spider Mills. Strapped with bombs, Law goes on to ask Doflamingo to join his crew. Doflamingo accepts, and about a week later, Law is holding a grudge against Corazon, who is Doflamingo's brother. But Doflamingo warns Law, don't lay a finger on my brother, okay? And this just makes me happy because, yes, Doflamingo is eventually really a bad guy at the end of the day, right? But he still cares about the people that he's very close to, especially his brother. He was very, very protective of his younger brother. And later, learning about the tragedy of Flevolence, where Doflamingo tells Law that he could be cured from his white lead poisoning if he eats a devil fruit. And Doflamingo promised Law if they do find a devil fruit and he eats it and he's cured, he will go on to train Law personally and become his right-hand man within 10 years' time. And for the next 2 years, they go on to make a home for themselves and spread their influence throughout the Grand Line. And while out on sea fighting Marines, Corazon and Law suddenly leave the battle, claiming that he will find the cure for Law's disease. And 6 months later, via Denden Mushi, Law calls Corazon, asking how the search is going for a cure, but that search is going nowhere. And if you want to know more about Law, like I said, this is I'm ranking the Warlords. Go check out Law's ranking. It's really good. But Doflamingo informs Corazon that he has information on the Ope Ope no Mi, or the Op Op fruit, and he wants Corazon to eat it to heal Law, unaware of Corazon's current devil fruit. Doflamingo's crew ends up arriving on Minion Island, where the Ope Ope no Mi fruit is said to be held, being met by Virgo, who goes on to tell Doflamingo of Corazon's betrayal. Corazon was also a part of the world government. He was in the faction called Sword. Being very disappointed in Corazon's actions, he uses the bird cage. So Corazon wouldn't escape, and later confronts Corazon, and Corazon ends up pointing his pistol at Doflamingo and goes on to reveal his current rank in the world government. And after the two exchange words, Doflamingo goes on to kill his younger brother, escaping the island while escaping Saru's ranks. Now jumping forward to 10 years ago, the takeover of Dressrosa. Doflamingo and his crew begin to blackmail the world government in order to become a warlord. And one night soon after this, Doflamingo appears in Dressrosa in King Riku's chambers. Doflamingo demands 10 billion from the king and his people to avoid an incident. King Riku agrees to his plan, but in reality, Doflamingo planned on never keeping his word in the first place. He moved on to overthrow the country, using his devil fruit to control Riku, making him attack his own people, laughing from the shadows. After a lot of chaos, Doflamingo and his crew make it seem like they're coming to save the people of Dressrosa, but King Riku is eventually saved by Kyros, and Kyros actually eventually goes on to lose one of his legs, being turned into a toy in the process. And the next day, Doflamingo takes the throne, becoming the king of Dressrosa, promising that he would make the country rich. He goes on to use the island as their base of operations, and using his weapons trading abilities, he instigates wars amongst various countries, kingdoms, and factions. The crew goes on to oppress anybody who is opposed to Doflamingo, turning a large percentage into toys, erasing them from the minds of the world and everyone who loved them. And during this time, he makes an alliance with Caesar the Clown and Kaidou, an emperor of the sea, to create Sad and Smile fruits, and this was to create Zoan-type users in the new world for Kaidou's beast pirate crew. A real businessman. And he ends up putting Virgo on Punk Hazard, that is where Caesar the Clown is creating all this stuff, because Doflamingo doesn't trust Caesar, to be exact. And around this time, he kills all of Baby Five's boyfriends and goes on to destroy their island in the process. And 2 years ago, Doflamingo finds out about the defeat of Crocodile, and he goes on to tell Treble to find out about this new captain, Monkey D. Luffy. And later on, during the events of Jaya, he and the other warlords are summoned to a meeting to speak about the crocodile situation. And during the meeting, he finds himself to be bored, so he uses his devil fruit to make two vice admirals fight, but is stopped by Sengoku. Now jumping ahead to the events of Long Ring Longland, he's back on Mocktown and is disappointed in Bellamy and Syracuse fighting under his flag. He uses his devil fruit to make the two fight each other. I fucking hate Bellamy, so anytime I see Bellamy like down and out, I'm clapping. Saying that this is the new age where only worthy pirates are of use, dropping the two from his fleet, and we all rejoice.
ただし、俺の部下にはいらん。
We can't have him in our ranks, I'm sorry. Now jumping forward to the events of Sabaody, Doflamingo receives a call from Disco, and Disco is asking for help at an auction house on Sabaody that is owned by Doflamingo, because there was a bunch of bullshit happening at that auction house during the Sabaody arc, but tells Disco he doesn't care anymore, and that's old news. The new thing is Smile Fruits, and he ends up leaving the auction house in Disco's hands. And soon after this, he arrives to Marijois in preparations for the Marineford War. And on Marineford, he was content at sitting back and watching the war play out. That is until Orange Jr. arrives and attacks Doflamingo. And Doflamingo goes on to take the leg of the behemoth.
Doflamingo no yaro, ashi o ketsu.
Going on to make Atomos attack his allies, and this is where Doflamingo gives his iconic speech in the One Piece universe. Child who is raised in war versus a child who is raised in peace. No, two completely different worlds.
Children who've never known peace have different values than children who've never known war. The one who wins will rewrite the definition of right and wrong. They'll decide the future and how the past is written. Will justice prevail? Why, there's no other way!
But Doflamingo at that point was raised during both. Okay, so in my opinion, this is a great addition to his character, and it's real. You know, you gotta listen. Like, this nigga is spitting. And later in the war, Doflamingo goes on to tell Ivankov about Kuma and how he is not the same Kuma anymore. We just did our Kuma ranking. Kuma also has a great story. And later is seen controlling Jozu and is eventually confronted by Crocodile. He then proceeds to ask Crocodile to join him, but Crocodile rejects, sending him away with a sand attack. Later getting his lick back by attempting to decapitate Sir Crocodile's head. This moment right here, really, I always thought Doflamingo's like fit. Obviously, like, he has some drip in the One Piece, in my opinion. Like, that shit's disgustingly fire. His walk, everything about Doflamingo already had me like in the palm of his hands. But when he did this, and at first when I first watched Marineford, I was like, fuck, not Crocodile. But it was so iconic, you know, and it just made you low-key look at Doflamingo a little harder. Like, okay, this guy is serious about his power. And at that time, we didn't even know what his power really was. It was a moment. But it soon stopped my Mihawk, and Doflamingo throughout the rest of the war is just seeing gagging over the events, just weak as fuck. He did not give a fuck about who won, who lost. He did not care, but he was just having a good time, eating up the event. And after the war, Doflamingo goes on to take out Moria, deeming him too weak to serve in the ranks of the warlords, saying that someone higher than Sengoku in the ranks told him to do this. And at that point, Sengoku was the fleet admiral. Who's higher than that? The five elders, Imu, who knows? Now, during the time skip, at some point after the war, Doflamingo came into possession of the Mera no Mi, which was reborn after Ace's death. And also during the time skip, Bellamy gives Doflamingo a golden pillar from Sky Island, and Doflamingo ends up giving Bellamy a second chance. And now we're gonna jump forward to Punk Hazard, where Doflamingo gives permission to Caesar to take out Luffy and his crew as they manage to stumble upon Punk Hazard. Doflamingo knew everything that was going on thanks to Monet and Virgo, but things go from bad to worse. As Law destroys the Sad Factory, this was a moment for Law, a moment for Law and Doflamingo together, and Law takes out Virgo and Luffy takes out Caesar the Clown, and capturing him. But Doflamingo decides to make his way to Punk Hazard himself. And as he is on his way to Punk Hazard, he runs into his subordinate's head floating on a raft in the sea. Law is a savage. This was Law's doing, obviously, but he is a savage. He learned from the best. He was under Doflamingo for a few years, and on this raft was a Den Mushi that was ringing, and Doflamingo answers, and it's Law saying that he would have to retire as a warlord in order to get Caesar the Clown back. And this is important because if he doesn't have Caesar, then he can't make sad, and he can't give sad to Kaidou, and Kaidou would be mad. Yeah, but this would make Doflamingo unprotected by the Marines. And this angered Doflamingo, but he's still on his way to Punk Hazard. And when he makes it to Punk Hazard, he is met by Smoker, which doesn't go well for Smoker. And as Doflamingo is about to take the finishing blow, he is stopped by Kuzan.
Hold on there. Pardon me for the intrusion. I'm afraid I need you to step aside. That man you intend on killing right there, he's an old friend of mine.
This moment right here is just so iconic. First of all, my favorite warlord, Doflamingo, and my favorite admiral. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. Kuzan is my favorite admiral, and those two clashing just for a second, they didn't fight. It was a movie for me, okay? It was my holiday. But like I said, they didn't fight. There was no reason to fight. He ends up leaving Punk Hazard, making his way back to Dressrosa, where he gives in to Law's order, resigning as a warlord and the king of Dressrosa. And while sitting in his room in Dressrosa, he receives another call from Law. He has a few words going back and forth with Luffy, and they have the plans to meet on Greenbit for Caesar. In the meantime, the citizens of Dressrosa are in an uproar over Doflamingo's resignation. How would you say that? I don't know. He resigned as a king, but he is waiting for CP0 to arrive so he can clear up the situation. And as he makes it to Greenbit for Caesar, Law is made aware of Doflamingo's true intentions. And him, Fujitora, and Law go on to clash for a quick second, where Doflamingo ends up subduing Law, and he goes on to tell Law of his past as a celestial dragon. And somehow Law manages to escape with Caesar, but Doflamingo's on the ass. Okay, you're not getting away. Realizing that Law is trying to get back to the Thousand Sunny, he goes on to attempt to destroy the ship, but is stopped by Sanji. But Sanji is no match for Doflamingo, ends up being immobilized, but is stopped by Law. Who teleports himself, Sanji, and Caesar back to the Sunny, and Doflamingo goes on to attempt to destroy the ship again, but has to stop because Gyola is on the ship, allowing Sanji's crew enough time to escape. Then Law and Doflamingo start fighting. And this fight was amazing, okay? In my opinion, it wasn't really much of a fight, okay? Like, Law was already like out of juice basically, so like it was really Doflamingo on his pedals basically, but at the same time it was still a great fight. At this point we've learned to love Law, and Doflamingo at this point was shaping out to be a great villain, so it was just great to watch.
Tacto!
And the two go on to fight all over Dressrosa, concluding the fight in front of the Colosseum in Law's defeat. And Doflamingo actually goes on to shoot Law right in front of Luffy and Zoro, once again shaping himself into a great villain for us for this arc. And I was on the edge of my seat personally. I know people have their issues with Dressrosa, mainly the pacing, but I don't give a fuck. I thought it was peak. I'm sorry, it's one of my favorite arcs. Say what you want. Eventually taking Law back to the castle with Fujitora with plans to make an example out of Law. With Luffy falling into his trap in the Gladiator Coliseum for the Maramara no Mi fruit, there was a big fight happening for the Maramara no Mi fruit, and Law being subdued, things are looking great for Doflamingo. But Law's plan is still in action. But soon after this, Fujitora and Doflamingo go on to have a little bit of a moment where Fujitora tells Doflamingo about abolishing the Warlord system. And what Doflamingo is doing is wrong. Doflamingo ends up attempting to kick the Admiral, but he blocks it, saying that they will remain on good terms for now. Soon after, he is watching the finals of the tournament and is confused as to why the guards are saying Luffy is infiltrating the castle, as Luffy is supposedly in the Coliseum fighting for the Maramara no Mi. Trying to get information out of Law, Law doesn't budge, and later tells Trouble to move Sugar up to his chambers, as there is commotion down in the trading port as well underground. But not too long after this, every toy in Dressrosa was turned back to normal, including Robin and a few of the other gladiators that were taking a part of the tournament. Doflamingo is taken by shock, and Kyros takes this opportunity to attempt to decapitate Doflamingo. Moment right here, once again, I'm gonna keep pointing out the moments that were just like, oh my god, it was a moment, okay, an iconic moment. Doflamingo's head just goes flying, but this was I'm gonna call it a string clone, okay? It wasn't the real Doflamingo. There was a lot behind that decapitation for Kyros, okay? Being trapped as a toy for years, being the only toy on the island that didn't come under Sugar's control, basically. Either way, he knows what's going on throughout the whole 10 years of him being a toy. So like I said, there was just a lot behind that. But Doflamingo isn't dumb. He goes on to attempt to Rosans and them trying to decapitate people. Slicing the palace in half in the process. Going on to be saved by Luffy, and Doflamingo and Luffy end up having like a bit of a back and forth here, but ends up telling Pika to move them outside, downstairs, move them away from the palace, immediately initiating Birdcage. Once again, iconic. Using Parasite to take control of the people of Dressrosa. And he begins his game where everyone is trapped under the birdcage of Dressrosa until one of two things happen. One of the things being if someone can kill him, or unless they manage to bring the heads of the people that he put bounties on, which is Law and the Straw Hats and Rebecca and King Riku. But eventually Law, Luffy, and Uzi, which is a big animal, what is it, a buffalo? I don't know, are trapped in an underground little tunnel with no escape, and a clone of Doflamingo shows up, and the three end up having words and almost takes out Luffy, but is stopped by Abdullah and Jeet. And soon after this, Bellamy appears, questioning Doflamingo. Questioning, crazy, why are you questioning the king? He questions Doflamingo about his going-ons, and Doflamingo goes on to beat the shit out of Bellamy. Oh my god, we rejoice. We rejoice. Eventually, Law and Luffy make their way back up to the palace and are confronted by Doflamingo, and they begin to fight, with Luffy going on to try to attack Doflamingo but is blocked by Bellamy, who is being controlled by Doflamingo. going on to attack Law with a string clone, where Luffy and Law come up with a plan to switch Doflamingo with Room, allowing Luffy to hit him with a red rock. This is one of my favorite scenes in not only Dressrosa but in One Piece. Every time I see it or even talk about it, I low-key get the chills, and I'm just like, but they kind of ate that. They kind of ate that. And the three go on to clash, eventually sending 2 clones to fight Luffy and Bellamy, while he goes after Law. And the two have words about Corazon and Law's devil fruit, and they continue to spar. But eventually Doflamingo gets the upper hand, where he sends shots into Law's body with a pistol that has lead bullets in it. A full circle moment for the two. He is the one that second-handedly kind of healed Law's lead poisoning. So the fact that Doflamingo went on to do this is nuts and speaks to his villain character. Love it. I'm sorry, I do. Luffy sees this and is pissed, but it wasn't Law. Law managed to escape, switching his bodies with a grunt of under Doflamingo, seriously injuring Doflamingo's organs. And I have to pause. This moment was legendary. I'm sorry, I'm a stan of Doflamingo, but I'm also a stan of Luffy and low-key Law, I guess, but like really Luffy. So seeing them winning is what I want. But like, it hurt for me because I loved Doflamingo. But in great villain fashion, with his own devil fruit. Like I said at the beginning of this video, Doflamingo is one of those people that really achieved greatness with his devil fruit, knowing how to use his devil fruit to his advantage in a spectacular way. Standing up in this moment again, once again, it's a Conqueror's Clash, iconic legendary moment, and the two begin to clash, with Luffy sending Law down to Robin's group, and the two go on to have an epic battle with respective moves from both parties, like Overheat with Doflamingo and Gummo Gummo no Grizzly Magnum. But still, Luffy wasn't putting a significant amount of damage on Doflamingo. That is until Luffy goes Gear 4th for the first time in the story. And unfortunately, Luffy goes on to Oro Farm on my king. And this was a huge moment. 480-ish chapters into the story, and all we had up to that point was Red Rock and Gear 4 or Gear 3rd. And to have to pull it out on Doflamingo just shows you the amount of power that Doflamingo really held. Icon, legend. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. I see it. I don't know what y'all not seeing. But since this is his first time using it in battle, soon after, Luffy loses all of his energy and has to pause the fight for about 10 minutes, but soon gets back up for round 2, the deciding battle. And during this fight, Doflamingo goes on to tell Luffy that he has awakened his devil fruit, and once again, this moment is iconic. One of the first mentions of awakening a devil fruit. It might be the first mention of awakening a devil fruit, and I'm here for it. That's my king. Of course he's awakened his devil fruit. And he turns a huge portion of the battlefield into string, ending the battle with 16 God Threads from Doflamingo and Luffy's King Kong gun. knocking out my king Doflamingo for the finish, knocking his iconic glasses off of his face. Fuck. Ending the legendary reign of Don Quixote Doflamingo. Doflamingo was eventually arrested and they put handcuffs on his already unconscious body. Give him a break. I mean, I know he turned people into toys for 10 years and, you know, nobody remembered them, but the toys remembered their lives and stuff. It's very psychological fucky, but like, give him a break. And later, Jack from Kaidou's crew attempted to get Doflamingo back, but that plan failed and they take Doflamingo to Impel Down level 6. And since his incarceration, he is seen here and there laughing at the events that play out in the One Piece world as a true villain. He is defeated, but he hasn't lost his identity of evil. Okay, like he laughs in the face of chaos, just like Blackbeard. I said this in my Blackbeard ranking, but like Doflamingo just, he gives that aura of evil. Having menacingly great reactions to like the Vegapunk's message, for example. He was gagging over this message, just like when he was gagging at the Marineford War. And that's really all that we've seen from Doflamingo since his incarceration, is his reactions. Okay, love that. Oda knows Doflamingo gets the crowd going, so he always puts him into these important moments in the story. As of right now, he's like the One Piece's version of a Batman villain. Okay, I mean, they do call him Joker, right? And that's the last we see of Doflamingo reacting to Vegapunk's message of the story right now as 1183. Now, before my predictions and my ranking, I want to give my thoughts here on the established legend of the story. Doflamingo is a philosopher at heart, and as a villain, he plays that role so well. The psychological impact that he has had in the story is disgusting. Okay, from killing his own father to killing his own brother, you know, laughing in the face of evil. He doesn't give a fuck, you know, and then going on to take over an entire country, just letting the people there be miserable. Well, the toys, because the other people didn't know what was happening. That's the psychological part of it. It's just, it's amazing. Forcing the world government's hand by blackmailing them, making him a warlord, giving him this freedom that he had once as a celestial dragon, starting proxy wars, all while selling different races at his auction houses on Sabaody, selling weapons that lead to the countless amounts of death in One Piece. This is the last time I'm gonna say it, but psychologically, Doflamingo is the greatest villain in One Piece history, in my opinion. Now, you could fight that and say Kaidou, because Doflamingo was really working under Kaidou, but I feel like Doflamingo was doing more like damage to like real people, you know what I'm saying? I mean, the whole land of Wano was also in a bad spot, but it was because of Doflamingo. You know what I'm saying? But eventually, at the end of the story, it will be Imu that holds this title as the craziest One Piece villain. But as of right now, I'm giving it to Doflamingo. Sorry. Having a hand in every single faction in the universe of One Piece. Legend, the Marines, Pirates, Emperors, Warlords, everything you can think of, Doflamingo had a part of it. Laughing and gagging at all of it. A villain worth the praise. Now let's move on to my Doflamingo predictions. My first prediction for Doflamingo is that at some point, Kaidou or Blackbeard will attempt to break in to Impel Down, causing another riot, allowing a lot of people to be freed in the process. He could eventually join back up with Kaidou, having a hand, because I don't think Kaido's dead personally, but I think he could join back up with him, having a hand in the final war. Doflamingo does know about a national treasure of Marijois, so it could be very great for Kaidou's crew and Blackbeard's crew go check out my Blackbeard theories. I got more into it in that video. And Winfried, if he doesn't want to join Kaido or give Blackbeard any information, I could see him joining up with Cross Guild. Now, on Marineford, he was going back and forth with Crocodile about joining him, and eventually Crocodile and Mihawk ended up joining forces with Buggy, and now they have Cross Guild. I could see Doflamingo going into Cross Guild, having his way in the organization, because at the end of the day, Doflamingo is a businessman, and all the Cross Guild things started because of a business. I could see him turning it into a billion-berry business, personally. And my next prediction is he could possibly have a change of heart, helping Luffy in the final war. Like Blackbeard, Doflamingo is one of those characters who knows a lot of things that a lot of different people in the story don't know, and he could have some information like the national treasure of Marijois to give Luffy an upper hand in the end battle. And finally, I see Doflamingo in his, let's say, 70s, okay, as a successful businessman who once reigned terror over the Grand Line of One Piece, a wealthy and happy businessman that takes care of his family. I see this for my Legend of the Sea. I do. I think that he will have his happy ending. Okay. Now, finally, my Doflamingo ranking, and I mean, hey, I'm giving him an S tier. He's S tier gold. Okay, when it comes to villains in One Piece, Doflamingo stands out amongst the rest. Not only because of his character design, okay, we all know he's dripped the fuck out, but as I've been saying throughout this video, he is one of those villains where you're just like, okay, this guy is very calculated. Like Blackbeard. Blackbeard has a lot of respect. Let's give some of that respect to Doflamingo because he did it all. He is the successful version of Crocodile. Blackbeard wants to become a king. Doflamingo already did that 10 years ago. You know what I'm saying? He could have easily went on to be an emperor of the sea. I'm just saying. From world noble to commoner to warlord to the king of Dressrosa to a prisoner, the philosophy of Don Quixote Doflamingo will live in my head forever, rent free. Now, I would love to know your thoughts on Doflamingo. I'm sorry. I know I said a lot, but I'm trying to sell it to you guys. You know what I'm saying? Because I get it. I got it my first watch. I didn't know that people didn't like Dressrosa until I got into One Piece Twitter. That was just a whole nother thing in itself, and I still don't get it. I mean, I do get it. I guess the pacing could have been a bit better, whatever, but I was here for every single moment in Dressrosa, happy to just be a part of it. I would love to know your guys' thoughts. The most lucky and unluckiest person in One Piece, someone who continues to fail upwards. The steadfast, ambitious jester, Buggy the Clown. Today, we are continuing in my series of ranking the warlords, and today and this week is all about Buggy. Now let's start with Buggy's basic stats. Currently 39 years old, born March 8th. Standing at 192 centimeters or 6'4" for my American people out here, with a ridiculous bounty of 3,189,000,000 berries. That bounty is insane. That's more than Luffy's bounty, okay? That's insane. That's an insane fucking bounty. Shout out to Buggy. He has the Bara no Mi, or the Chop fruits, which is one of my favorite fruits in the series. I think it just has so much potential. Of the awakening, I think it would be so fucking peak. Okay, now let's talk about Buggy's basic timeline in the story of One Piece that we've seen so far. Born somewhere on the Grand Line 39 years ago. And at least since the age of 9, Buggy was with the Roger Pirates as an apprentice. On this crew, he meets Shanks, where they sort of become like friends in a way. It's like friends that you have a lot of disagreements with, but you guys are still like locked in low-key. That was their relationship on the crew. And after the crew raided a random ship, they find the Chop fruit. where Buggy goes on to pretend to eat it, but actually hiding it away, with the plans of leaving the Roger Pirates, selling the devil fruit, and becoming rich. But, oh no, Shanks actually puts it in his mouth, and Buggy accidentally eats it. Okay, so Buggy didn't want the devil fruit, but the devil fruit came to him in a way. And it just goes to show, even in his younger years, he was failing upwards. I mean, sailing with the Roger Pirates, the king of the pirates, not at that time, he wasn't the king of the pirates yet, but still, sailing with Roger. Roger was known worldwide as a celebrity amongst the pirates. And also having this broken, in my opinion, could be broken devil fruit. And basically after Buggy eats this devil fruit on accident because of Shanks and losing his map all in the same moment, okay, Buggy basically declares a grudge against Shanks, which, I mean, if you didn't want a devil fruit, you can't swim. You know, he couldn't go in the water to get his map. You can't swim. There's some outs to having a devil fruit. So, I mean, I get it. I get why Buggy was pissed, okay? So the crew continues to sail all throughout the world, from Skypiea to fucking Wano to Fishman Island, everywhere in the story that you can think of, searching for the last island in the world. But as they find the final island, Buggy gets sick, okay? I think this was destiny. Personally, I don't think Buggy was meant to see what was on the final island as of yet. But since he was sick, it forced him and Shanks to stay behind on the harbor. And they didn't get to see the One Piece itself. But in that moment, Buggy and Shanks made a commitment to each other that they will sail together one day and get to the final island, Laugh Tale. But after all this, Roger becomes Pirate King. They are on top of the world until Roger decides to disband the Roger Pirates. Everyone going their separate ways and whatnot. And a year later, after all this, Roger is executed, where we see all the big names here witness Roger's execution. They all witnessed the Pirate King's beheading, unfortunately. And after this, Buggy reminds Shanks of their promise that they made to go sail after the One Piece themselves. But Shanks says he wasn't ready to do that at that time. But with Shanks not being ready, Buggy was upset with this and proclaimed that the next time they see each other, they will be enemies. Now Buggy is grown up, okay? And he founds the Buggy Pirates, okay? That only do piratey things to small, weak villages. And about 4-ish years ago, they end up taking over a small village called Orange Town, where he stays at until Nami and Luffy and the boys pull up onto this island, where Luffy and Buggy end up fighting, and Buggy actually sticks his little 3 claws into the top of the straw hat, leaving a mark on the straw hat to this day. I think that's a very important moment that I had to point out. Luffy ends up defeating Buggy, sending him flying off of Orange Town in a spectacular way. And after this, Buggy finds his way to a small island with only a few pieces of his body, mind you. Nigga was looking crazy as fuck. Where Buggy runs into Gaimon, the little man with the green afro that's stuck in the treasure chest. And after leaving Gaimon, Buggy runs into Elvita, where him and Elvita create a sort of a little pirate alliance with the same intention of getting revenge on Luffy, where they track Luffy and crew all the way to Log Town, where Buggy ends up trapping Luffy under the same guillotine platform thing that literally was Roger's execution spot, with the plans to kill Luffy right then and there, but was stopped by Dragon, now that we all know, quickly being captured by Smoker. But just as fast as he was captured, he was released because Dragon sends a wind wave down the streets of Log Town, and Buggy decides to enter the Grand Line. But they end up figuring out that Luffy's bounty actually went up to 100 million. Now the plans of chasing Luffy down and getting that bounty seem a lot more rewarding. But sometime after this, Buggy once again was on the wrong island, where he thought a cave held Captain John's treasure, but whole time it was a marine garrison. So he was arrested, and he is sent to level 1 Impel Down, where he actually makes a few attempts to escape, but they all fail. That is until Luffy shows up. Luffy, who wants to go to Marineford to save his brother, breaks in to Impel Down and has this big riot, okay, where all the prisoners escape. Buggy was one of the prisoners. And they make their way to Marineford. And this is where Buggy becomes a living legend. Let's start off with this. Buggy was making it seem like he was the reason that the gates of justice opened, and some of the prisoners, the grunts, the, fodder pirates, overhear Buggy saying that he wants to kill Kizaru, which they admire. Okay, yes, our pirate king. And from this moment, they start pleading their loyalty to Buggy, getting behind him like, go off, king. Gaining allies through Marineford as the war went on. But for the most part, trying to stay out the way so he doesn't have to fight. Buggy is not a fighter, okay? And in the middle of this fight, we see that his prisoner lackeys have a Den Mushi, a video transponders now that they stole from Impel Down. But before they could start broadcasting, Kuzan freezes everything, okay? So they're stuck in there, but later become free from Akainu raining down one of his insane magma fist things, going crazy. And Buggy swears revenge on the Marines. And these lackeys are eating it up, just feeding his ego in a way, but also still gaining followers as time goes on. And the snail goes on to regain consciousness, and they continue filming, where unknowingly he's making it seem like he is absolutely aura farming. Okay, and people take notice to this. But after seeing Akainu kill Ace, Buggy tries to escape. He tries to fly away when all of a sudden Luffy and Jinbei fall into his arms. Buggy gives Jinbei and Luffy to Trafalgar Law, and after this, Shanks shows up, where Shanks lies to Buggy and says that he will give him a treasure map, a legendary treasure map, if he returns the Straw Hat to Luffy. And they end up escaping Marineford somehow, some way. The resilient Buggy, hello. And after escaping Marineford with his new crewmates, he links back up with his old crewmates and gets an invitation to be a warlord. And he goes on to use this newfound freedom of a warlord to start up Buggy's delivery business. I love this. Personally, I love this because it just shows that Buggy is kind of a businessman at the end of the day. He wanted treasure, but he also wants money, like the treasure would give him money, but he's a businessman, like he needs to get it done. And that was with the help of some funds that Crocodile gave to Buggy to start up this business. He just wanted to be a chill guy, a chill CEO guy, and I fucking respect that. But not too long after this, the Warlord system was dissolved, bringing a short but kind of successful end to Buggy's reign as a warlord, and almost being arrested, that is until being saved at the last moment by Crocodile, which Crocodile came here to get his money. Like, you owe me money, bitch, for this company. Run me my money. But Buggy just doesn't have this money, and that is when he offers Crocodile a percentage of the company. Like, you use the company for free, whatever. And this creates Cross Guild, okay? I love Cross Guild. I keep saying it, like, I love it so much. And this all comes into play because one of Buggy's subordinates makes the poster for the company, the Cross Guild company, and put Buggy's face right in smack dab in the middle, making it seem like he was the leader of this group. I mean, because in the eyes of his subordinates, he's that guy to them. So it makes sense why they did it. But after the world finds out about this, the papers get a hold of it, Cross Guild, the new link up with pirates, Buggy is crowned an Emperor of the Sea. You love to see it. You love to fucking see it. Me personally, I do. And my Legend of the Sea goes on to say he wants to become the Pirate King and go get the One Piece. And that is what Cross Guild is currently doing right now. And all his crewmates hear that on the loudspeaker, basically, that was accidentally left on. And they are just overjoyed, okay? I respect it. I'm sorry, Buggy just continued to fail upward. Now that you're caught up with our favorite clown, let's get into some predictions of where Buggy is going to go in the future. Buggy will go on to make it to Laugh Tale. Cross Guild will make it to Laugh Tale, and Shanks will also make it to Laugh Tale around the same time. They're going to be on the island at the same time, and in some misconstrued way, keeping that promise that they made to each other when they were just kids. But not only this, I feel like Buggy will play a huge role in the final war. I mean, look at his delivery system in place right now. Getting weapons throughout the world would be easy for that. I feel like that's kind of the role that he's going to play, but who knows? I feel like the Chop Chop Fruit Awaken could be different, and he could play a crazy role. Okay? But I don't know. Just prediction. And I feel like he will go down in history as one of the most legendary pirates in the history, okay? And people will talk about him like how they talk about rocks, okay? Now, I said this with the same thing with Crocodile. Not in that scale of rocks, because rocks did some absolutely crazy shit, but in a way, he will be talked about for centuries, whether people think it or not. And after all is said and done, I feel like Buggy will go on to find John's treasure, you know, and find his peace. Okay, Buggy's peace, and probably live out his days as the CEO of Buggy Delivery Service. That's where I see Buggy at 30, 40, 50 years into the future. I love seeing Buggy win or lose. I just love seeing Buggy. I think he's very entertaining. Okay, and where would I rank him on this ranking system? I have to give Buggy an A+, okay? If I'm looking at how I'm ranking these warlords, it's if they fail, okay, but did they get back up again? Gecko Moria didn't. Crocodile did, but still continued to fail, and that was an underling. Looked at as an underling of Buggy, okay? Buggy is successful in the way that he didn't expect to be, and I feel like he's going to be even more successful in the future, okay? So I have to give Buggy an A+. He's right up there with Mihawk, in my opinion. Not everything is about strength. Okay, I do think Mihawk is the strongest here so far, but I think Buggy's intuition and his fate carry him a long fucking way. I love Buggy, sorry, I mean, I just do. It is what it is. But I want to know what you guys think about Buggy's story and his prediction, where he's going to go in the future. We love Buggy here on this channel. He's one of my favorite characters in One Piece. But I would like to know what you guys think. With a bounty of 320 million berries, a man shrouded in failures, losing to Kaidou and inevitably failing his crew not once, but twice, wrecking his Pirate King dream. Today, we are making a video about Kozuki Moria, formerly known as Gecko Moria. Okay, so I'm making a series about the warlords, going through each of the warlords and where I would rank them on this scale here, whatever the scale says, that's where we're going to put Moria in today's video. Let's talk about his past, how he got to where he got to. Alright, we know he was born in Ringo, in Wano, and raised in the West Blue. We don't know how he got there or why he was there, you know, we don't really know the details, but we know that as much. We know that much. His old crew was called the Gecko Pirates until Kaidou, you know, unalived all of them. Which in turn drove him to what we see, or what we know of him in Thriller Bark, creating an army of underlings that are zombies, okay? Now, I want to give a quick rundown of Gecko Moria, just his stats, okay? He's a captain of the Thriller Bark Pirates, okay? He is also, or was also, a warlord of the sea, one of the 7 warlords of the sea. So he had pull to his name, okay, for sure. Born on September 6th, he is currently 50 years old post-time skip, standing at 692 centimeters or 22.8 feet for my people, my Americans. Now he creates this zombie army with his devil fruit. I always thought, personally, Kuma's devil fruit was peak. I thought it was always peak. The Kage no Mi, or the shadow fruit, okay? okay? With this fruit, he's able to steal shadows and put them into other beings, making them his army, like I said. But also, the shadow people, for example, Luffy and Oars. He steals Luffy's shadow and puts it inside Oars. Now, Oars has Luffy's powers, his devil fruit, basically. It's interesting because there's more to it. There has to be more to it. It's not just snipping somebody's shadow and putting it in another person, and that person could just do what the fuck they want. It's crazy. It's really crazy, honestly, when you think about it. My only thing with Moria was zero aura. He just didn't give me nothing. That's a personal opinion, okay? Because if you look back at it and do a little research, you find out that Gecko Moria's original form, or what Oda wanted him to look like, was kind of boring. It was boring. I like this Gecko Moria better. But the second design, oh my god. Why didn't he do that? Like, that was giving aura. It was kind of scary. Not gonna lie, I'm scared easily. But Moria didn't scare me, okay? It just wasn't that for me, personally. But with the help of Dr. Hogback, he could take these shadows and put them into other people's body, and he thought that he was untouchable. Yeah. Now, I want to talk about what we've seen from Gecko Moria thus far into the story. He stole the shadows from multiple Straw Hats, including Brook, and even some legends from the past like Ryuma and Rock's Pirates members like Captain John, and a few others, okay? This man has balls. Balls! Nonetheless, having these strong souls with you, he was defeated by Luffy. I mean, that's our W Luffy. What? That's our captain, nigga. And after this, he still kept his position as a warlord. But he was at Marineford. This is where everything goes again for Moria. Doflamingo was ordered to execute Gecko Moria there on Marineford because the world government really they don't take Moria serious. That's how I feel, okay? They just looked at him as a weak link in the world government, so they ordered Doflamingo to execute him, stripping the title from his big body. Okay, unfortunately. I'm not body shaming, okay? I'm a big boy. Okay, so I'm not body shaming. But we also know that he was at Roger's execution. All the big names seen Roger be executed, okay? Mihawk, Gecko Moria, Crocodile. There's just so many that were there and witnessed it and went on to be great pirates themselves, but some of them were failures. Now I want to talk about where is he now, currently in the story. And after escaping Doflamingo's clutches and escaping into the new world, Vegapunk cloned him and made a seraphim out of him. Okay. They do this to replace the 7 Warlord system because it's clearly not working. You have newbies like Luffy defeating Warlord after Warlord after Warlord. Legend, by the way. And then we see Gecko Moria attack Hachinosu, which is Blackbeard's turf, Blackbeard's territory. A lot of balls this one. The reason he attacked Blackbeard is because he was trying to save Absalom, one of his crewmates, the invisible devil fruit guy. But Blackbeard, unfortunately, already killed him, took the devil fruit, gave it to one of his crewmates. Blackbeard is sick. Okay, I've been talking about it in a few videos now, but Blackbeard is sick. But not only does he fail getting Absalom back, at least in time, he gets captured himself. Later being freed by Perona and Kobe, okay, well, escaping with their help. And after this, we don't really know much about Moria. Where is he now? That's it. That's all we know. So right now, okay? So that leads me into my predictions. I want to give a few predictions about where I think Moria will, the next time we'll see him, what's going to happen, okay? Will we see him again? Yes, I think we will. I don't think that Gecko Moria being revealed as a Kozuki literally in the month of September was just for a fluke. I don't think that it just happened just because. I think there's a little bit more importance behind it. Will he be important down the road? Now this is where things get interesting, because yes and no. I'm saying no because I don't think that it's game-changing importance. I don't think that it's story-breaking importance at all. But I do think that Gecko Moria, now that we know he's a Kozuki, could possibly be able to read poneglyphs, and that could be important. Very important, okay? So that's why I'm saying yes, because to one of these players in the end game of One Piece, he could be important to them. Maybe, possibly. Now, will he get revenge for Absalom and even on Kaidou? We don't know if Kaido's dead yet, but he could still somehow get some possible revenge on Kaidou. And I'm gonna say maybe to this, because at this point, after Kaidou defeated Moria was just, he didn't look at him, he didn't even believe in himself. Let's be real. But I feel like Absalom was important to him. If he went all the way to Hachinosu trying to fight Blackbeard, Absalom was definitely important. So this might give him a change of like heart, a change of pace. Like, it's not about revenge. Let's do what we want to do in order to really solidify and give ourselves a legacy behind our dead crewmates. That's what I'm hoping for. Hoping he becomes like more of a chilled out guy. But that is the story of Gecko Moria, what we know so far. And from what we know so far, I'm putting him in the C tier. He went out and tried to do big things, but failed. Okay? And I don't want to make it seem like I'm just a hater of Gecko Moria, because I'm not. There's moments, but a lot of his moments are failures. And if he learns in the future, he could possibly rank up to a B. Now, his Devil Fruit, for me personally, I would put that as an A. I would love to see it awakened. The current greatest swordsman in the world of One Piece. The Yonko level, aura farming, laid back, unforgettable Dracula Mihawk. Now today I am continuing in my series of ranking the warlords, and today is all about Dracula Mihawk. First, let's do a quick rundown of Mihawk's basic stats, okay? Mihawk is currently 43 years old and was born March 9th, okay? Shout out to him, we were born in like the same. I'm April 13th, he's March 9th. Standing at 198 centimeters or 6 foot 6 inches for my Americans, with a bounty of 3,590,000,000. That's a big bounty. He has a bigger bounty than Luffy, okay? It's kind of insane. And one of the coolest character designs, in my opinion, in all of One Piece, not to mention Dracula Mihawk. That is a cold ass name, okay? We're being real here. Okay, now we need to talk about what we've seen with Dracula Mihawk, okay? A little rundown of his little timeline here. Although he was introduced in chapter 49 and introduced in the anime in episode 23, the earliest we've seen him is at Roger's execution, okay? Now, we know all the big names were there, a lot of the big, not all, but a lot, maybe they were all there. You know, we keep getting more and more people as the years go by. And honestly, since he was introduced, I've been a stan literally ever since. I think he's just cool. Like I said, his character design, his name, it's just cool. But with that introduction, we've seen him take out an entire fleet with the Don Krieg pirates. I've been a stan ever since. I'm sorry. It's like I said, an aura farmer. He really is. Without doing so much as raising two hands, okay? He's that guy. I'm sorry. We're stating facts. And that was on the Baratier, the little Baratier arc. And also within that same arc, he basically one-shots Zoro, okay? The aura was spilling off of the pages, off of the screens when this happened. But he didn't end up killing Zoro because he seen something in Zoro, okay? Love that. We love a Zoro stan because I'm a Zoro stan myself. But he's also known as the Marine Hunter very early in his career. And he was the first warlord introduced to us. So maybe I should have made Mihawk go first instead of Gecko. But it's good here. We're good. And he is rivals with Shanks, which to me kind of says a lot, okay? Because everybody respects Shanks, you know? Everybody in the story, even the One Piece community, very much so respects Shanks. And I mean, as he should. He saved our MC. I mean, Shanks is a respectable guy. But why, when it comes to Mihawk, everybody's just like, that guy is a fraud? You know, we're going to get into it a little bit more. But I just want to point out that it's just so odd, because if Shanks respects Mihawk, why do the people that respect Shanks not respect Mihawk? It's just, I don't know, it's a bit strange. But Mihawk refuses to fight Shanks because Shanks lost his arm very early on in the story, even though they're rivals. And since then, the Baratie basically, really, we haven't seen much from Mihawk until the Marineford War, where obviously he sides with the world government. He has to, he is a warlord, and he was only trying to hurt Luffy and fodder pirates. Okay, we're just being real, because he was ducking fades with worthy opponents like Vista. Okay, I mean, hey, proof is in the pudding. Vista is a legendary swordsman in the Whitebeard Pirates. And honestly, I think this is where he gets the fraud accusations from, because you're the strongest swordsman in the world, but you're not really putting up much of a fight, or not even engaging in much of a fight. And I just want to say, I want to point out here again, not to be a Mihawk glazer, but you guys glaze Dragon. You know what I'm saying? Like, we haven't seen Mihawk do anything worth being called the greatest swordsman in the world. But, I mean, what about Dragon? We haven't seen Dragon do much of anything. I'm not trying to drag Dragon here, okay? I'm just keeping it fair, okay? If you're gonna say this about Mihawk, you have to say it about Dragon, okay? I mean, obviously, if Mihawk has this huge bounty right now and is considered the world's greatest swordsman of the time, I mean, he has to have done something, you know? And to be honest, I said he was ducking fades, okay? I'm just keeping it real. He was. But I don't think that it was, I think it was a little bit deeper than that. I think Mihawk knows his, like, where it could go if he gets serious. I'm just saying, you know, Vista's bounty is not that high. Let's just be, do we even know Vista's bounty? Maybe we do, I don't know. But it's not as high as Mihawk's. Let's be fucking for real. But after Marineford, we see him go back to Kurigana Island, where Perona was after she was sent there by Kuma on Thriller Bark. Also, Zoro was there. And Mihawk agrees to train Zoro, which, thank God, you know. Like, that was Zoro's dream from the very start, and now his dream opponent basically is teaching him the ways of the sword. It's great. To me, it's great. After the time skip and after training Zoro, the Warlord system was unfortunately in some cases, was dissolved. And that's where Mihawk gets this huge bounty. Okay. It's like, why are we not talking more about this? Okay? Now let's talk about where Mihawk is at right now. Well, after accepting the joining invitation from Crocodile, he joins up with Crocodile and Buggy, creating what we know now as Cross Guild. Cross Guild, to me, is one of the coolest link-ups in the story. I really like that. I love the untapped potential that that crew has to offer, and I think it could grow, and I think it could be legendary, okay? Where they are also attempting to go after the One Piece, which, like I said, that untapped potential, it's gonna build. Oda's gonna add more to it, and I just can't really wait to see that happen and their outcome, okay? What is gonna happen with them? It's a very curious case with Cross Guild, okay? Now let's talk about the predictions for Dracula Mihawk. Where will we see him in the future? Where is his story going? Well, personally, I think we have a lot more to see from Mihawk, like his beginnings, like before he was seen at Roger's execution, okay, yes. But I think he is related somehow, some way, some shape, some form to Emu. I think he is part of the Nerona family, okay? That is a video that's coming out right after this, so, well, a day after this, so come back, make sure you subscribe, okay? And I think he will be a key part of whatever the ending of One Piece will be. Personally, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, you let me know what you think. And Zoro will take that title from Mihawk as the greatest swordsman, and it's coming, okay? I want to know what you guys think. What is your predictions about Mihawk? Where is Mihawk going? What is the future beholding for Mihawk? And I think he will go on to be one of the most respected characters in One Piece. But not only that, we will also witness why he is given that epithet as the greatest swordsman of all time. Now, I forget where I ranked Moria on this ranking scale, but I'm sorry, his character, even though we know more about Gecko than we do about Mihawk, I'm ranking Mihawk higher just because Mihawk has that flavor in him. It's a personal thing. I know people either love or hate Mihawk. I respect the guy, okay? So I am gonna give Mihawk an A+ on this ranking personally. It's personal here. Honestly, where would you rank Mihawk? Okay, I would love to know where you would put Mihawk on this rank from what we've seen and what we think, or, you know, like your predictions of where he's gonna go. Canonically, the most beautiful woman in One Piece. Some people think or look at her as a bitch, but what she's been through, her actions and attitude are, in my opinion, 1000% justified and rational. Walk with me. Today we are continuing in my series of ranking the Warlords, and this week is all about Boa Hancock, the Snake Empress. We love her. Everybody loves her. She's an icon. She's a queen. Yeah. Now we're going to start off with Boa Hancock's basic stats. Okay. Currently, Boa Hancock is 31 years old. Born September 2nd with a huge bounty of 1,659,000,000 berries, and is the current user of the Mero Mero no Mi, or the Love Love fruit. It is a paramecia type that can turn other people that she looks at, or, you know, whatever, into stone. I love this fruit. I really do. I'm basically giving Medusa, basically. But the person has to be, like, attracted to her in some way. Whether they think she's beautiful, whether they lust after her, she can turn them into stone. So it doesn't really work on, like, let's say you're like Zoro, San. It might work on Sanji, actually. But it doesn't work on people that are just, like, thinking clearly, okay? Standing at 191 centimeters or 6 feet and 3 inches. She is a big gal, big team. Okay. Born in the Calm Belt on Amazon Lily. I think Amazon Lily is a beautiful, beautiful island, okay? And it's full of beautiful women, so yeah. Okay, now let's get into Boa Hancock's basic timeline. Where has she been? What has she been doing throughout the story? Born on Amazon Lily 31 years ago. And when she was 12, her and her sisters, Boa Marigold and Boa Sonia Sander, decided to create their own little crew called the Kuja Pirates. And they set sail away from Amazon Lily. But not too long after this, they get kidnapped and sold to world nobles, unfortunately. And during her enslavement, she was force-fed her devil fruit, the Love Love fruit. And this was no walk in the park for these girls. The world nobles get up to no good. I mean, I'm talking about rape, abuse, just anything bad that you can think of, these world nobles were doing for these three sisters. But after 4 years of being enslaved, at the age of 16, they are freed through the work of Fisher Tiger. Now, Fisher Tiger did not go up here looking to free the Boa sisters. I mean, he really just went up there to free the fishermen people, but a lot of people escaped with the crazy noises and stuff, through the crazy noise and stuff, okay? Where they were later rescued on the sea after escaping by Granny Nyon and Ray Lee. Oh, and Shaki too. Shaki was here with them too. But things weren't peaches for these sisters. They have these emblems, scars. I'm gonna call them scars. So having these scars burnt into their skins and their unwanted devil fruits, they really go into hiding. You know, not trusting anybody outside of themselves, and mainly really men, okay? Making her into the cold-hearted ice queen that we all know and love today. And that's why I say people think of her as a bitch, but her actions are justified. I'm sorry. And at times, you know, just get over it type vibes. But we'll get into it later. Okay, let's just keep going. And at the age of 18, she becomes the Empress of Kuja after the death of Tritoma. And despite her young age, she quickly becomes like a threat. The world government views her potential as a threat, where she gets her first bounty of 80 million berries. And after this, she chooses to join the Warlords in protection for her sisters, you know. I mean, she does it for the whole country, of course, but really, like, she really wants that extra layer of protection for her sister. She went far to protect her family, okay? And it just goes to show what kind of person she really is. Siding with the people that made you, you know, that you have these bad memories and trauma from, just to save the same people that also went through the same thing. It's an interesting dynamic. And now we're going to flash forward to 10 years because that's all that we know from her younger years. At the age of 29, we see the Kuja pirates sailing back to Amazon Lily after some sort of like adventure or whatever, where she is stopped by a Navy vessel led by Momonga, I think that's his name, and she tells her that she is being summoned by the world government to be at Marineford for Ace's execution, which was happening a week from there, and she refuses. She doesn't want to go, turning everyone on this Navy vessel ship into stone besides Momonga because he stabbed himself in the hand, so he didn't get the effects. But he says he'll stay off the coast of Amazon Lily for a couple days in hopes that she will change her mind. But she says, do what you please, do what you want, you know, I'm not going. And when she returns back to her palace, she notices that there's not many guards on duty right now, and that's because they're off chasing some monkey that they hear about in the forest of Amazon Lily. She shrugs that off, and also Neon's words about going to Marineford, fulfilling her duty as a warlord. She just shrugs it off, going to take a bath. And this is where Luffy falls into her bath. This is like really nuts, okay? It's nuts to her, of course it is. A man on your island falling into your bathwater, ew. She's disgusted by this, okay? And Luffy actually sees her scar that was given by the world government, and she actually tries to petrify Luffy. But Luffy is a simple-minded little boy, you know, he's not really attracted to much besides bugs and being the Pirate King. He even thought it was Foxy's slow beam, okay? So Luffy's just, he's not all the way there, but he is at the same time. He's not worried about these things right now, so it had no effect on him. Then he tries to escape and ends up getting caught and sent to the arena in the Kuja village or whatever. And this is where Boa didn't hold anything back on Luffy or anybody that defended him, okay? Margaret, Sweet Pea, and Aphelandria, I think that's her name, were actually turned into stone for bringing him. They brung him here to Amazon Lily, so they were turned to stone. But after realizing that Luffy wasn't attracted to her in any way, and was actually sickened by the way that she was acting, her behavior, and she sends her sisters into the arena. Her sisters having these devil fruits, the Hebe Hebe model Anaconda and the Hebe Hebe model King Cobra. With these devil fruits and their hockey, they were keeping Luffy at bay, okay? Trying to just, like, keep him down for right now. But Luffy releases a little burst of Conqueror's hockey, and this is where Boa Hancock is like, whoa, we both have, like, the same, not technique, but power. And at this point, Luffy just wasn't playing around anymore. He goes Gear 2, defeating the sisters. But as one of the sisters' world government scar is about to be shown, Luffy covers it up really fast, not wanting anybody else to see it because he knows that it's embarrassing. They're embarrassed by it. And this moves Boa Hancock into tears, and these are her first steps of opening up, especially to Luffy. And then she tests Luffy. Would he rather the sisters, you know, get help, or would he rather have a boat? We all know Luffy is empathetic, so he passes the test with ease. And this shocks Boa, okay? And later on at the palace, Luffy and Boa Hancock come together, and Boa tells Luffy of her past. And Luffy is empathizing with her pain. He also hates the world nobles. They're about to kill his brother. He had to punch one back on Sabayori. So it's not new for him, but like, he listens to the story and is very, very just like feeling her pain. And this is where she falls in love with Luffy. I mean, how can you not? You know, Luffy is he's so charismatic. So I get it. You know, I never hated on Boa because I get it. Luffy's that's mine. And after all this, she agrees to the world government summons, okay, and helps Luffy break into Impel Down. This was all just to help him break into Impel Down. She will do ride or die for Luffy at this point. And he hides in her robe, and once they get to where they need to get to in Impel Down, he thanks her, but she takes it as "I love you," or like she misinterprets it as "I love you," and this is real. I mean, she was already in love, but this is where she's like, she starts fainting and shit. Like, girl, okay. And she gets Magellan to take her to Ace's cell, where she cryptically tells Ace that Luffy is on his way to save Ace. And this is where she goes to link up with the other warlords in Marijua. And in this Marineford war, she is seen attacking both sides. Everybody to her is an enemy besides Luffy, okay? She's just worried about Luffy most, if not the entire time of the war. Even going as far as giving Luffy the keys to Ace's handcuffs. And this is where Luffy actually hugs Boa Hancock, and she takes this as a proposal. Once again, I get it. I love Luffy. That's me. I'm telling you, that's me. So I get it, Boa. And like, I get it. I just get it. I get it. And as the war goes on, she continues to be at Luffy's beckoning. Okay, like cheering for anything that happens, or being shocked and worried when something bad happens, glazing him along the way. Like I said, I get it. And after the war ends, where Luffy is just in shock, she gets a marine ship to follow Luffy, with her on it, of course, saying that she will bring back the head of Luffy, but really in reality, she's just worried about Luffy and is following him to wherever he's going. And when she finds Luffy, she is very, very, very much worried about the condition that he's in. He's very fucked up, you know. Mind you, he just had the shots from Ivankov, a few of them, and also was in a bunch of scuffles. Okay, he was fucked up, you know, so it makes sense that she was worried for his health. So she decides to bring him back to Amazon Lily, where he can recover safely. And 2 weeks later, he wakes up. And when he does, she has a feast waiting for him. And then soon after this, she takes him to bring the Oxbell back at Marineford. And after this, she takes Luffy to Rusakaina with Rayleigh for their training. The 2-year time skip happens here for Luffy. And after the time skip, Luffy is basically Ubered back to Sabayori to link up with his friends with a bunch of food, thanks to Boa Hancock. And she even goes as far as saying that she wants to marry Luffy, but Luffy declines. But this will not stop her. She is in love with Luffy. I'm going to keep saying it. I get it. I get it. And then after this, we see her stalling a bunch of the Marines so Luffy can safely escape to Fishman Island. And we don't see much of her until after Dressrosa. And after the Dressrosa incident, she puts a huge photo of Luffy's new bounty in her room at her palace. I get it, girl. I get it. Okay, so first of all, I said it was in her room when it clearly isn't. It's like outside of the palace. Like, looks like it could be in like a courtyard or something. But also, when I say I don't play about Luffy, I'm not playing like I get it 100%. This is in my living room, by the way. And not too long after this, the abolishment of the Warlord system comes into place, where Marines come to Amazon Lily to arrest Boa Hancock, because now she is just a pirate, not under the world government, you know, label or anything. She's just a pirate. But she's not really worried about these Marines. That is until Blackbeard shows up. And Blackbeard is here to take her devil fruit, her power, and was very close to. This was very close situation. But she is then saved by Rayleigh. Once again, Rayleigh comes and saves the day. This is like very much in his character, because then we find out he saves Shaki on God Valley. And so with Rayleigh showing up, saving her, the Blackbeard Pirates and the Marines leave Amazon Lily. And the latest that we've seen from Boa Hancock is she is listening to the Vegapunk message right now, and she's still worried about Marines coming back, but also she still needs that from Luffy, okay? I get it. Okay, I get it. And now that you are caught up on our girl, Boa Hancock, what a story, okay? What a character. I really fucking love Boa Hancock. I do. But let's get into some predictions. Now, with these warlords, I feel like most of them will make it to Laugh Tale. I don't think Boa Hancock will go to Laugh Tale. I don't see a reason for her to, unless it is Luffy. I just don't see her being there in that arc. But walk with me. I do see her fighting alongside Luffy in the final war. Her devil fruit can definitely come in clutch in certain situations, especially to the fodder or the, just the lower level guys. But not even that. She has Conqueror's Haki, and we all know that Conqueror's Haki is the only way that you can defeat these demons of Emu, okay? But it has to be very strong, but still, it can come in clutch. Hers is not that strong, but it can definitely come in clutch. But the biggest prediction I have for Boa Hancock is she will definitely end up with Luffy. I see it. There's nothing against it. There's no other person in the story besides Bartolomeo and maybe like Chopper, okay, that like really go that hard for Luffy, like as a stan. She is the female version kind of Bartolomeo, but like she really loves this man. And once again, I get it, and I just see them being together, and I'm talking 20, 30, maybe 10, 15 years into the future. I see it. I see that for them, having a little family of their own. I see it so bad. Now, where would I rank Boa Hancock on this list that I've been ranking these warlords? I'm giving her a solid A, okay? I don't think she deserves an A+, because I don't think she's that integral to the story. But, she is one of the only warlords on this list that actually gives Luffy so much help, okay, and love, and like standing over, like she stands Luffy, okay? So I'm gonna give her an A, easily, definitely. Like, she's not the strongest, but I'm not looking at this as strength. I'm looking at this as like, this character is a good character, and definitely her character and her story is very fucking respectable. I just wanted to, and I just want to say, I don't look at Boa Hancock as like a snotty bitch, okay? I look at her as she is in a male-dominated industry, okay? And with her story and the way that she was treated as a child, the way that she moves and speaks, I don't know. Like I said, it's rational. Get over it. But I would love to know how you feel about Boa Hancock and her story and just everything, okay? What's your vibes with Boa Hancock? The blueprint for almost every One Piece villain, everyone's favorite early One Piece villain, the resilient, unwavering Sandman Desert King, Sir Crocodile. Today, we are continuing in my series of ranking the warlords, and today is all about Crocodile. Really, this week is all about Crocodile because I have a theory coming out along with this video, so stay tuned. Now let's do a quick rundown of Crocodile's basic stats. Currently 46 years old, and he was born September 6th. Standing at 253 centimeters and 8.36 feet tall. With a bounty of 1,965,000,000 berries, and having the sand fruit, the Suna no Mi. It is a Logia type. He can, basically control sand, make his body into sand. He's a sand user. Okay, now let's get into Crocodile's timeline. Where and what has he done over the course of the story? Well, we know he was born somewhere on the Grand Line. It's not really mentioned where, but we know it's somewhere on the Grand Line. 24 years before the current storyline, we see Crocodile at Roger's execution. I think he was at the age of 22 or something like that. And I mean, it makes sense. All the big names that are big right now in the story all witnessed Roger's execution. And around this time in his youth, he meets Emporio Ivankov, and something happens between these two that Crocodile does not want us to know. But I have a feeling we will find out sooner or later. After moving to the New World and becoming a warlord in his early 20s, he grows some balls and challenges Whitebeard, and Whitebeard clears, okay? Easy diff. Let's just be real. Easy diff KO. It happened, okay? And this kills his dream in becoming the king of the pirates. Yes, Crocodile wanted to be the king of the pirates. Now, 16 years before the current story, at the age of 30, he moves to Alabasta and becomes the pirate hunting hero. Cool. That's a cool name. I like that. I like, you know, Zoro's epithet. You know, I love Mihawk even had an epithet like that, so I find it cool. And while in Alabasta, he starts a secret crime syndicate, what we now know of as Baroque Works, with the plans to take over Alabasta and use its poneglyph to find the ancient weapon Pluton, which would put Crocodile above a lot of people in the story. With having that much power behind you, you would be a threat for sure. So I understand why he was going for it. You know, he lost to Whitebeard. He needed something, okay? And we all know how Alabasta ends. Luffy ends up defeating Crocodile, and like Whitebeard, Luffy ends another one of Crocodile's dreams. And after Luffy brings an end to the Desert King, Smoker, of all people, gets the victory royale. Okay, let's just be real. Luffy was not granted that victory because if the world knew that the pirates did a good deed, then it would look bad on the world government, so they gave that victory to Smoker, stripping Crocodile of his warlord title. After Alabasta, he was sent to serve his sentence in Impel Down, level 6, where he was later freed by the same man that ended one of his dreams, Luffy. And he was basically forced by Ivankov with this secret that we don't know about yet to help at Marineford. Okay, now we're jumping into Marineford. And at Marineford, Crocodile gets into so many scuffles. Like, I feel like we see him the most. Out of a lot of people that are there, we see him fight the most. Crocodile versus Jozu, which was stopped by Doflamingo. But Doflamingo asked Crocodile to join up with him, team up with him, which Crocodile declines the offer and sends Doflamingo away with an attack. But later we see Crocodile just standing there, all, you know, minding his business somewhat, some sort, and his head just goes flying off. Doflamingo cuts off his head. That moment in Marineford will live in my head rent fucking free. And we even see him step in to save Luffy from Mihawk, which is fucking insane. Like I said, he was getting into so many scuffles here on Marineford. Shout out Croc. You know, I kind of used to shit on Crocodile because I wasn't really the biggest fan of Alabasta, but now looking back and doing these videos, I have more respect for Crocodile. And really, we know that Crocodile came here to get revenge on Whitebeard, but it was robbed of him. And once again, ending one of his dreams by Blackbeard. Of course, we all know Blackbeard deals the final blow on Whitebeard. And he even goes on to attack Akainu, which I personally believe Akainu is top 5 strongest present at Marineford. You have Shanks, Akainu, Kuzan, GARP, Whitebeard, but Whitebeard was stage 4. So I don't know, but Akainu definitely is up there for sure. And Crocodile attacks him. Crocodile has balls! I love that! He has balls. And he somehow escapes with Mr. 1 from Marineford. I don't know how he did it, but he fucking did it. That's why I called him resilient. You'll never stop him unless you're Luffy or Whitebeard. And after Marineford and in the 2-year time skip, Crocodile gives Buggy the funds to open and establish the Buggy Foundation. Okay, it's a delivery service. And it's like, okay, networking, kings, love that. It's a business move, and I like that. I like seeing stuff like that. And now, post-time skip, the Warlord system is dissolved, and we see him join up with Mihawk, which to me is crazy because they were just, you know, beefing on Marineford, and now they want to be friends. I mean, I understand they were on two different sides or whatever, but it's interesting to see that friendship. And he goes on to ask Buggy for the money back that he lent him to establish Buggy's delivery service, but Buggy doesn't have it. He doesn't have the funds, and after many threats, Buggy just says, you know what, you can use Buggy's delivery service, which then in turn creates Cross Guild. I talked about it in my Mihawk video. I think Cross Guild is so fucking cool and has so much potential, so I'd love to see where that is going to go for them. And they will go on to attempt to retrieve or go and see what's up with this One Piece. And now you are caught up on Crocodile, but I want to talk about his predictions. Like, where are we going to go with Crocodile? Where is his character going? We will see Crocodile in the future, and Cross Guild will make it to that final island, and they will cement themselves as one of the greatest pirate crews in history. I put my stocks in it. I'm here for it. That's me. That's me. And for Crocodile himself, I do think that after a while, after all this is done, I do feel like Cross Guild will disband, but I feel like Crocodile is a businessman, kind of like Buggy, and I feel like he will go on to have a successful business and be a legend in that era, you know, an old legend, like how people talk about, not to that degree, okay, but how people talk about Whitebeard, you know, people will talk about Crocodile, you know, that legend, like Ray Lee, you know, just a lurking legend, just running his business. I feel like that's what I see personally for Crocodile. Now, where would I rank Crocodile on this list? I'm gonna give him an A, okay? I don't think that he deserves an A+. I just don't. Too many failures, okay? And that was my biggest problem with Gecko Moria. But Gecko Moria didn't really, you know, put in any effort after being defeated once. Crocodile was defeated twice and still is out here trying to do his big one. So definitely an upgrade from Moria. But I put Mihawk more up there because I feel like Mihawk has way more importance in the story than what we know right now, okay? So I am gonna give him an A, and I think it's rightfully deserved. And honestly, after doing this video, I look at Crocodile a little bit different now, okay? I respect him a lot more, because if this was like a year ago, I don't know, I'd probably give him like B, at least a B. I always thought his power was kind of cool, but I've grown to respect Crocodile. Let's just leave it at that. The most tactical, deliberate, resolute pirate on all the seas. The fearless, almost untouchable Trafalgar D. Waterlaw. Today we will be getting back into my series of ranking the warlords, and this week is all about law. Trafalgar Law. Basically a straw hat. At this point, you know, he's been in the story for so long, and he is a warlord, so he is a part of this series. Captain of the Heart Pirates, who is currently 26 years old, born October 6th, standing at 191 centimeters or 6 foot 3 inches tall, with an outrageous bounty of 3 billion berries, and is the current user of the Ope Ope no Mi, or the Op fruit. And with this devil fruit, he has a few broken abilities, okay? This is, I always say this with devil fruits, but this is one of my favorite devil fruits. I feel like it's a lot of people's favorite devil fruits, but it's a great devil fruit. He can create what he calls a room, a spherical space, which he can control anything, including people, for example, surgically cutting people up, not killing them in the process, just like separating, like say he wanted to take off somebody's arm, he could, and even put it back on. It's a very interesting fruit. But also he can swap other people's personalities and also teleport himself and others within inside this room, this space of his. It's interesting. It's one of the, like, when you think about One Piece devil fruits, this is, once again, technical. It's a very technical devil fruit. And all that can be done with a flick of a finger. But the most important thing that this devil fruit can do, and what people talk about Law for in the story and in real life, and what people love this devil fruit for, is the fact that it can grant immortality. Okay? Is crazy. So basically Law has to perform a surgery on somebody, and that grants them immortality. It's insane. The devil fruit is insane. But it comes at the cost of the user's life. Say Law did this, Doflamingo made Law do that surgery on Doflamingo. Law would die. It's really a double-edged sword of a devil fruit, but it's still broken nonetheless. But enough about Law's devil fruit. Let's get into his basic timeline. And we're going to start with the tragedy of Flevolence. I think that's how you say that name. Law was born in the North Blue in a country called Flevence. And it's also known as the White City from the amber lead that is mined here on Flevolence. His parents were doctors here, and they were training Law and his younger sister to be doctors themselves. But before long, the white lead poisoning was taking over the city, ravaging the city, and the parents of Law tried to help, but it was too much even for them. And on top of all this, a neighboring country and Flevolence were at conflicts with each other, and the neighboring country even came over to Flevolence and raided the entire city and ended up burning down Law's parents' hospital clinic, where his sister was inside of, and she unfortunately passes. It's sad. And then, right in front of Law, an extermination group. Hello? They're calling themselves extermination group because they're killing humans. Is nuts. It's insane. Ended up shooting Law's parents right in front of them, killing them both. And Law ended up escaping Flevolence under dead bodies that were being shipped out of the country. And this right here changed Law's personality forever. Okay, this is why he's so like cold-shouldered, cold-hearted, you know, to most people. In life after the tragedy of Flevolence, he ended up on Spider Mills Island, where the Don Quixote pirates were, and he ended up approaching Doflamingo with 3 bombs strapped to his chest, and told Doflamingo that he only has 3 years to live, because Law does have the lead poisoning himself. And after this, Law meets Corazon, and he finds out Corazon actually doesn't like kids. And Corazon actually ends up kicking Law out of a window wherever they're meeting at here. But after this, Doflamingo reaches out his hand, not reaches out his hand, but gives Law a hand and says, "You can join my crew." And over the next few years, they went on to do, you know, typical piratey things. And they all grew closer and closer, and some of them even went on to train Law during these years. But soon after this, Law has more and more white spots on his body, and he only has a year or less to live at this point. And so he goes on to tell the crew his real name, and that he has a D. Corazon takes interest to this and tells Law to step away and come swap to meet real quick. And in this conversation, Corazon says if your name actually does have the D in it, to stay away from Doflamingo, because he reveals his actual true plan is to stop Doflamingo and, you know, put an end to everything that's going on, and it would like somehow, some way just come in between this plan that he has. And he tells Law that he should leave Doflamingo's crew. And he even tells him about what the D means. But Law refuses, and even says that he would expose Corazon to Doflamingo, but takes a second to realize he shouldn't do that because Corazon actually didn't tell on him that Law stabbed him. After Corazon kicked him out of the window, Law ended up going on to stab him. And sometime after this, Corazon ended up going to take Law with him to find a healing agent for this white lead poisoning, to no avail. And this broke Corazon. Corazon was really finding himself very close to Law, and it broke him, and he started crying while Law was asleep. But Law wasn't actually asleep. He overheard him begging and pleading, you know, to God, I guess, to find a cure for this white lead poisoning. And not only did this break Corazon, but this broke Law too. Law has gone for a while without, you know, feeling like there's anybody that really gets him or like supports him. So this was a heartfelt moment for Law, and I remember watching this, I was like, this is like Big Brother for real, you know? And this made the two closer during this time, but Doflamingo ended up reaching out to see how the search was going for the cure. And Doflamingo ended up telling him about the ope fruit and how it could possibly cure Law's disease. And they later arrived at Minion Island, where the devil fruit was supposed to be, where he leaves Law in an abandoned village so he can go collect the devil fruit, and he ends up coming back, okay, and force feeding the devil fruit to Law. But Law has second thoughts. But after Law sees that Corazon has like scars on him, like he was like hurt, but Corazon ended up handing Law a letter to give to the Marines, and he ended up giving it to Virgo, who he ended up bringing back to Corazon, unaware that Virgo was a double agent working under Doflamingo. And he goes on to attack Corazon and Law, and ends up telling Law everything about how Corazon was also a double agent. And while Virgo was distracted, Law and Corazon actually ended up escaping before Doflamingo could make it. And he ended up putting Law in a chest and put a quiet shield around him, kind of like Law's room, so Law wouldn't be found. Telling Law that he loves him and allowing himself to be caught. And this is one of the saddest moments in One Piece history. Law is in this chest, crying, screaming, but once again, no one could hear him because Corazon put the quiet shield around him, so he's just in here in agony. While he can hear everything that's going on, Doflamingo is unfortunately killing his own brother with Corazon, and it's just sad. That's, oh my god, it's so fucked up. Oda is crazy. And after this, Doflamingo ends up leaving the island with a bunch of loot, including the chest that Law was in. But Doflamingo was able to escape while they were distracted, crying and, you know, just in so much distress over the loss of someone that gave Law light and hope in his dark world. Oh, it's just so sad. And Law ends up on a neighboring island where he runs into two boys, Penguin and Sachi, I think that's how you say his name. And they are bullying a young Beppo. And Law ends up beating them up for this, okay? And after this, the three boys went on to dedicate themselves to Law, saying they want to join whatever faction Law has going on. And that is the creation of the Heart Pirates. And soon after this, Law ends up going on to not mastering, but learning more of his devil fruit, and actually cures his own white lead disease poisoning. Beautiful. It's beautiful. And the crew goes on to conquer the Grand Line, becoming big shots in the process. Law even receiving a 200 million berry bounty. Shout out to Law. Where they eventually end up on Sabaody. This is where we're introduced to Law. Everything that I was just talking about prior happened in Law's childhood. Okay? On Sabaody, the big three really go on to like Ora Farm in front of the auction house, where he ends up freeing a captain named Jean Bart, and the Heart Pirates end up escaping Sabaody unscathed. But he was later seen back at Sabaody watching the execution of Ace at Marineford, and as things go bad to worse, he ends up setting sail to Marineford, arriving at the very end, and this is the point where he asks Buggy to give Luffy to him, because Luffy also has a D in his name and he doesn't want to see other D's go down, so he was really adamant about about saving Luffy. And they make their grand escape from Marineford, tending to both Luffy and Jinbei. And later he ends up handing both Jinbei and Luffy off to Boa and Ivankov, ends up setting sail from Amazon Lily. And during this sailing, he tells his crew that he's not ready for the new world and he's waiting for the right time, telling them to follow his orders and that he is trying to steal the proper throne. Very interesting from Law here. And this leads us into the 2-year time skip. And during the 2-year time skip, Law is held responsible for the Rocky Port incident, where he sends the heart of 100 pirates to the world government, which is insane. If you really think about it, that shit is nuts. 100 hearts? Who's this guy? And this is where he is invited to be part of the Warlord system. He is finally a Warlord. Let's go, Law. And his bounty actually increased to 440 million, but was frozen because he joined the Warlord system. And sometime before the events of Punk Hazard, he sends his crew to Zhao, where they will be safe because he is about to put his plan into action, his grand scheme into action. And now we're in post time skip, where Law is finally on Punk Hazard and makes a deal with Caesar, giving Caesar his heart in order to stay here. And later goes at it with Smoker, who was confused by Law being here, where he flips the marine vessel in an insane way. Okay, when I seen this on Punk Hazard, I took Law a lot more serious. I was like, okay, this guy, he's pretty cool. Okay, but around the time of Law interacting with Smoker, the Straw Hats show up for some reason, and everybody ends up switching personalities because of Law. Luffy goes on to thanking Law because Law is the one that took him to where he needed to go after Marineford. But Law ends up going back to the lab and is confronted by Caesar, who Caesar thinks that something is up. Caesar ends up pulling a gun out on Law, and Law diffuses the situation, asking him about the children that he keeps hearing about in the talks that he keeps having with these people on Punk Hazard. And Law is visibly disgusted by Caesar's answer, as any normal human should be, you know. And after this, he ends up going to help fight the Yeti Cool brothers with Luffy, not even really helping, just like taking them out for him real fast. And this is where the next few years, almost decade of the story really comes into play. Law wants to create an alliance between himself and Luffy's crew, the Straw Hats, to take down one of the 4 emperors of the sea. Luffy accepts joyfully. They then go back to where the Straw Hats and the children were at, and Law ends up giving most of the Straw Hats back their bodies, their own personalities and stuff. And Law sets out with Chopper to find the medicine that they call candy to help these kids become more like calm, because they are kind of tweaking out in this cave. They then trick Monet into, you know, having like a conversation while Chopper goes in and finds the candy, but it's all like stopped by Virgo, who knocked Law unconscious, putting him into a cage. And as he becomes conscious, he is then told by Caesar that he still has his heart. Virgo squeezes his heart. Law goes back unconscious, because that shit has to hurt. I hate looking at it when it happens, because it just it cringes me out. It's like sick. And during this time, Luffy and a few other Straw Hats and even Smoker were also captured and were put in this cage and sent them outside to be swallowed by Smiley, the giant gas monster thing that is on Punk Hazard, But Law goes on to help them escape eventually, because Law is really the mastermind of all these situations here. You gotta just keep walking. And somehow Law even convinces Smoker into helping to escape this hellhole of an island. And Law eventually goes back into the laboratory, into the sad manufacturing room, I guess, and is once again met with Virgo, who still has his heart and squeezes the shit out of it once again. Law is immobilized, but is saved right in the nick of time by Smoker. During the fight of Virgo and Smoker, Law ends up getting his heart back somehow. Like, he just, you know, sneaks in and grabs it or whatever. And he notices that Doflamingo is watching all of this unfold. And it gives him a great opportunity and idea. He ends up cutting not only the entire lab, but the surrounding mountains as well, including Virgo himself, in half. This is one of the most Aura Farmer moments in One Piece. Like, when I seen this, like I said, when I seen him flip the ship earlier, I was like, okay, guy, you're cool. But this right here solidified Law for me, leaving Virgo to die by the incoming smoke or poison that is Smiley, and it's taking over the lab. So Smoker and Law make it back to where everyone else was, and Luffy ends up going on to defeat Caesar, and they all end up escaping to the edge of the island. They then give the children to Smoker and end up leaving Punk Hazard. And on their way to Dressrosa, Law calls Doflamingo and tells him he has 24 hours to resign as a warlord. That's the only way he will get Caesar back. And he goes on to tell the rest of the Straw Hats his plan on Dressrosa, that he wants to disrupt the underground weapons economy and destroy the Smile factories. And with this, the first part of Law's plan is complete, taking out the sad manufacturing, where they arrive at Dressrosa, and Doflamingo actually complies and resigns as a warlord. And Law planned on keeping his promise to Doflamingo, giving Caesar back on Greenbit, but also this was really just a distraction so they could get into Dressrosa and destroy the Smile factory, whatever. And he gives the Straw Hats that objective of destroying the factory. When Law's group makes it to Greenbit, they are a bit concerned, and they end up finding out that Doflamingo actually didn't resign as a warlord. It was all just a ploy. And Law is then confronted by not only Doflamingo, but Admiral Fujitora is also here, and they actually go on to jump Law, basically. Okay, Law tries to escape with Caesar, but they're not having it. This is where he finds out Doflamingo was actually a world noble, and that was a revelation to all of us. But Law ends up escaping with Room, taking Caesar with him, and eventually making it back to the Thousand Sunny, where he leaves Caesar in the care of Sanji's group, where Law stays back to fight Doflamingo on the bridge and end up actually in front of the Coliseum. Within this time, they go on to really aura form. We see more of Law's technique, more of Doflamingo's technique. It's a beautiful fighting scene, I'm not gonna lie. And like I said, they end up in front of the Coliseum in an unfortunate Law's defeat, okay? And in front of Luffy and Zoro, Doflamingo goes on to shoot Law, which is nuts. That was, once again, a crazy moment for me. I love Dressrosa. I know Dressrosa gets a lot of hate, but like, there's just moments that just make my heart just like, ooh. And this is where Doflamingo takes Fujitora and Law back to the Dressrosa Palace, with the plans to make an example out of Law. And here on the palace, they interrogate him, but Law doesn't budge. And later on, when the toys are finally freed, Luffy comes to Law's rescue, but they are soon thrown from the castle out of a window down to the ground. Pika at this point had already moved around Dressrosa, so it was messy. And this is where Doflamingo uses his iconic bird cage for Dressrosa. But eventually Luffy and Law make their way back up to the palace where Doflamingo is. And up here it is Law versus Doflamingo while Luffy is fighting Trouble. And Law hits Doflamingo with an injection shot, and this shakes Doflamingo to his core. And at this point we're seeing more and more and more of Law's abilities, and I don't know, am I a glazer of Law? But Doflamingo goes on to cut off Law's right arm with the plans to kill him with lead bullets, and that is very just crazy because he helped save him from the, you know, the white lead poisoning. It's crazy. It would have been a full circle moment. But he is saved by Luffy. And then Doflamingo goes on to tell Law that he wants him to perform the eternal youth or eternal life surgery on Doflamingo. And Law says he'll do it, but only if he can bring Corazon back to life, which it's not gonna happen, and Law knows this. But this sends Doflamingo into a rage, and he sends so many shots into Law's already tore up body. And Luffy sees Law's lifeless body and is pissed. He's pissed. Luffy is pissed. But little did everybody know, Law switched his body out with an already dead pirate fodder, and there might be something wrong with me. But Doflamingo's devil fruit gives him the ability to heal himself, his insides. Luffy then throws Law down to Robin's group in the flower garden area so he can be out of harm's way and, you know, get patched up. And not too long after this, Luffy is fighting Doflamingo, but Luffy runs out of energy in Gear 4, and Law goes on to protect Luffy for the 10 minutes that Luffy needs for the rest so he can get back his stamina and energy. But we all know Luffy goes on to defeat Doflamingo here, and it's gorgeous. I don't know, Blazer once again. And after the defeat of Doflamingo, the crew and Law are resting at an old house that is Kuros's for 3 days. Before finding out that the Marines were in pursuit of them, they gear up and get going. But while all the chaos is happening, Law is separated from the group and has a secret conversation with Sengoku, which this moment in particular has sparked a lot of controversy around Law, and we'll get into it in his theory video that's coming out a day after this. And in this conversation, they are talking about Corazon and how Law is AD. And on their way out of Dressrosa, this is where the Grand Fleet was created. Unfortunately, Law is not a part of the Grand Fleet, but in my heart, Law is basically a straw hat, okay? And soon after this, they were moved to Bartolomeo's ship, and this is where Law finds out that his bounty has been raised to 500 million, and he is no longer a warlord of the sea at this point. But they are still continuing to make their way to Zao. And now Law has finally completed 2 steps in his big plan of taking down Kaido. And after finally making it up to Zao, he is reunited with his crew. I love seeing when the captains find, even if they're like fodder captains, like reuniting with their crew. It's such a pure moment, but Beppo lives in my heart rent free, so I'm always like, yes, it's Beppo. And then they go on to find out about Sanji's situation, but the next day, the leaders of the Minks take Law and Luffy up to talk to Raizo, and they see the road poneglyph. And this is where they find out the truth about Momo and Wano and stuff. And this just goes along with him trying to take down Kaido, so he's like with it. And they all decide to make a Minks Ninja Pirate Samurai alliance here with the plans of taking out Kaido and liberating Wano. After they get the situation of Zunisha almost falling over with Luffy's group going to Whole Cake Island to rescue Sanji, and Law's group going to Wano. And while lying low in Wano, Law ends up confronting Hawkins, saying that he's after his life. They have a little bit of a back and forth. Nothing too major happens here, but eventually they reunite with Luffy. Luffy finally makes it to Wano, where they make their way up to Oden's castle and talk about the plans of defeating Kaido. And Kaido, the legend himself, decides to show up in dragon form. Peak cinematography here. I was upset. I was glued to my TV when I was watching this. But he shows up because Luffy and Zoro were causing mischief not too long before this, where Kaido goes on to destroy Oden's castle, and they both think that their crews are cooked. Luffy goes on to engage with Kaido while Law has to make his escape after being attacked by Hawkins, where he makes his way to Ebisu town with some of the Straw Hats, and not too long after this, Law's crew is captured by the Beast Pirate. And as he was going to try to rescue his crew, he is once again confronted by Hawkins, but Law couldn't attack him because Hawkins put his crew, Law's crew, in his puppets, and that's Hawkins' devil fruit. Is like a voodoo situation. So they devise a plan, Law for his crew, and not too long after this, with the help of X-Drake, Law gets out of the situation, escapes, but not before giving Hawkins his lashings, thank God. And now it's the night of the Fire Festival, when everything is supposed to go down. And after the big 3 Aura farm on the Beast Pirates fodder outside of Onigashima, they continue to make their way to Onigashima, where Law's crew makes their way behind Onigashima and ends up finding a poneglyph, but he's not really worried about this one because it's blue. And now we make our way to Roof Piece. And this is where we see Kid, Law, and Luffy aura farming on top of Onigashima, sparring with Big Mom and Kaido. But Law goes on to do crazy damage to Big Mom and Kaido with Gamma Knife and Counter Shock respectfully, and it's just so satisfying to watch. It's some of my favorite movesets in the whole series. I love Law, okay? And then Law suggests that they should separate the two because they are too good together, okay? And on the Roof Piece, I want to point out, Law was like really saving lives, okay? He saved Zoro a few times, Luffy, the Scabbards. I have so much respect for him, I'm sorry. But then Kid and Law end up working together to separate Big Mom from Kaido and Zeus and her other powerful homies away from Big Mom. And this is where Big Mom falls off Onigashima. But Law ends up teleporting himself and Zoro down below the roof, entrusting Luffy with the task of taking out Kaido. But Big Mom ended up making it back into the castle. And this is where Law forms another pirate alliance with Kid with the objective of taking out Big Mom. And the most underrated fight in all of Wano officially begins. And this is where we find out Law's devil fruit was actually awakened. And soon after, we see the tactician go to work, stabbing Big Mom through the neck, hitting her with the infamous K-Room Shock Willie. I keep saying it, but I need you guys to understand. I know there's Law stands out there, but this is just so satisfying to watch. I'm gonna fall back. I'm trying not to glaze, but and this definitely hurts Big Mom, but it more pisses her off more than anything. And she ends up powering up by stealing the souls of the fodder that are around. And they once again go on to spar for a little bit until Big Mom gets the upper hand, and she thinks that she defeated both Kid and Law, and she's trying to make her way back up to Kaido. But Law says, and hits her with the Shock Willie again. So iconic, so iconic. And they begin to go back and forth once again. And as the fight begins to become more and more intense, he coats Kikoku with K-Room, which is his sword, stabbing her through the chest, making the sword long enough to pierce through Onigashima all the way to Wano's soil, all while being torched by Big Mom's hockey fist. Which is crazy. It's that is a crazy. I was like, damn. And finally hitting her with his most devastating attack that we see, Puncture Willie. Concealing her screams with K-Room, like Korra is like a quiet room. He coated her with a quiet room, and it's just so eerie. Kind of, like just seeing her scream out in pain. Wow, it's just like how he was in the chest, and she's just falling to her death. It's cinematic. But with Kid and Law winning this long and hard battle, they are celebrated by their crews respectfully, and Luffy ends up defeating Kaido, as we all know, and this completes Law's plan of taking out an Emperor of the Sea. Not only did he take out one, he took out two. And a week after the raid on Onigashima, Law finds out that his bounty has jumped from 500 million to 3 billion berries, which is insane, next level, and it's deserved. They took out a fucking Emperor of the Sea, unheard of. Two of Rox's crews, two members of Rock's crew, you know, it's nothing. But he goes on to see Old Wano with Robin, and he ends up seeing the road poneglyph, getting a sketching of the poneglyph, and the whereabouts of Pluton. Law gives the other two captains, Luffy and Kid, a rubbing of the poneglyph that he found, because it's just, you know, they did this together. I know Law definitely gives off that hard shell, but he's still like, he knows Luffy is his bestie, and we all know it, okay? Leaving Wano and ending the pirate alliance that they started at the beginning of the time skip, going their separate ways. And post Wano, a few days after departing, Law's crew is making their way to the next island, where he suddenly runs into Blackbeard's crew. Getting hit with Doc Q's ability in turning Law into a woman? Question mark? But Law ends up making it to the island, and Blackbeard tells him that he wants his road poneglyphs, and Law says, okay, winner takes it all. So Law is prepared for this. He just fought Big Mom, you know, he's real beefed up right now. Law hits Doc Q's horse Stronger, where Blackbeard is riding, with our room amputee slicing the horse in two, making Blackbeard fall into the sea. This is one of those moments, this is one of those hype moments, okay? I was seated for this fight. And eventually the two end up going back and forth with moves like Shock Willie and Black Vortex from Blackbeard respectfully. But Law really ended up getting jumped, okay? Law is the strongest person on his crew. I mean, it makes sense for a captain, but his crew is very weak. And Blackbeard has the plans of killing Law and taking his devil fruit, saying that he should take his heart back to the 100 pirates that he helped defeat during the Rocky Port incident. They'd be happy to see his heart, that he has his heart. That's some real diabolical shit. But as Blackbeard goes to make his move on Law, Beppo turns Sulong and taking out most of the Blackbeard pirates, and the two end up escaping this island, leaving the rest of the Heart pirates behind. And this is the last we see of Law. But before I get to the ranking and the predictions, I kind of want to glaze, okay? Law's impact in the story is insane, okay? Like, he made most of the post-time skip era about, not really about him, but really it was about him. It was all his planning. It was his prerogative. Yes, our main cast did their big ones, and Sanji even had a whole arc by himself and stuff. I'm not saying that he took away from the cast, but he really pushed them to where they are now. And out of all 8 arcs post time skip, his presence was felt. He was here for 5 of them. Is that not insane to you? He's one of the most important and integral side characters of all time. We will respect him. That's why he is one of the most tactical pirates on the sea. And I'm gonna keep saying it. Shout out to Law. He really changed the story. Let's be real. Now for my Law predictions. Now I know Law was defeated, utterly defeated. The Heart Pirates were decimated, okay? But he's not dead. The next time we see Law, he will be trying to go and get his crew from Blackbeard. And another prediction I have, we will see him in the final war. I just feel it. I feel like he was so integral in the post-time skip that he will be there in that final war. And ultimately, this might be the biggest prediction. I think Law will die. At the end of the story, I think Law dies. And the way he does die is giving Luffy the eternal life procedure, because I just have a feeling Luffy's gonna not win the first fight with Imu. And Law has saved Luffy many times before, and Luffy has saved Law many times as well. But Law really talks a lot about the D and how important it is, and he's put his life on the line several times over this situation. And I think because of all this put together, it will be a fitting end for one of the most beloved One Piece characters of all time. I am giving Law the rank S. I have to. From his impact to the story, he was in 1/3 of the story, helping the main cast of the story, and he has a more important role to play in the story of One Piece. That's just how I feel. I don't know. You guys need to respect Law more, you know? After doing these videos, I do have a more found respect for these characters. Even though I already respected them, but doing this deep dive into them and really fleshing it all out really, really makes me respect the characters more. Because if you want to talk about impactful characters in One Piece, Law is up there. He's in the top 3. It is what it is. After the Straw Hats got back from their first, you know, full adventure in Fishman Island, he immediately signs up an alliance with Luffy, okay, to take down an emperor. And that saga, the Emperor Saga, took so long, but in a good way. I'm not saying it was bad. I love how the story played out, and I kind of thank Law because I love Dressrosa. I really, really do love Wano, and the fact that they all like flipped a coin basically to see who goes where after Wano, it's all because of Law. He is a tactician of the sea. Shout out to Law. The quite literal mystery of a man who was at one point a warlord of the sea. Walk with me. So today we are continuing in my series of ranking the warlords, and today and this week actually is all about Hanafuda, the warlord of the sea, and he's kind of interesting. Just walk with me. We are going to start with Hanafuda's basic stats. Stood at 514 centimeters or 16 feet and 10 inches. That is a tall man, okay? That is a big man. Known as King of the Lizards, and he is currently, unfortunately, deceased. I think that Hanafuda is kind of cool. I don't know, like, everything that I'm about to get into, it just kind of sounds cool to me. I want this character a little bit more fleshed out, but it is what it is. But now let's get into the basic timeline of Hanafuda. Most of his story is pretty much unknown, but what we do know is that he was pretty powerful, and he had some sort of influence if he was invited to be a warlord of the sea. And 22 years ago he became the father of Ulti, and then 20 years ago became the father of Page 1. Previous members of the Tobiropo, who was an elite squadron in the Beast Pirates Kaidou's crew. And speaking of Kaidou, Hanafuda had a special interest in collecting ancient Zoan devil fruits. He was captivated by strong individuals, and this ended up sparking a partnership between him and Kaidou, because he believed that Kaidou was going to be the next pirate king. So there's bits and pieces of that story that we just don't know anything, you know, so that's really most of what we know. So we're going to move on to his death, unfortunately. But 4 years before the present day in One Piece, he lost a fight to Porcus D. Ace. That's one of those things where I want to know more about, like, how did this fight go? You know what I'm saying? Like, what really happened? What was his power that he was using? You know, I just want to know. And soon after this, he was trying to make his way back to his children and was unfortunately killed by pirates. We don't know who killed Hanafuda, but they held a grudge against him for something that he did in his past. And it's just, wow, what a sad, sad story to this man. He just wanted to go see his kids. Okay, that's all. He just wanted to go see his kids. And obviously lost his spot in the Warlord system and was actually replaced with Kuma. And that's all we know of this character. And like I said, I kind of find him interesting, you know, like I could see him on Wano, you know, fighting somebody, you know, I could see it. Now with these Warlord rankings, I like to give predictions and also a ranking, obviously. Now I don't really have any predictions for Hanafuda because ultimately he is dead. And you know what? I've come to the conclusion we don't need to see more of him. I would like to know how the Ace fight, you know, how it happened and what his power was, but ultimately he added nothing to the story. He was just a underling to a bigger bad guy, you know what I'm saying? Even his kids were bad, you know, like not adding anything great to the story, but they are good now, so there is that. And yeah, let's just let him rest in peace. And I'm going to give Hanafuda a rank D. I am, because first of all, you lost to Ace. Not to say that Ace is like a bitch or anything, but like you lost to Ace and you lost to some fodder pirates, lost your life to some fodder pirates. So it's just like, bro, I don't know. I guess I'm just more of wanted to see more of his aesthetic. You know, they call him the King of the Lizards. I wanted to know what that was all about. But it's just you weren't good. Okay, you just weren't good. There's nothing more to say. But like I said, let's let him rest in peace until I post my theory video about him that I have coming out in a couple days. So be sure to be tuned in for that. When we talk about loyalty, Jinbei is kind of a contradiction, but still a very formidable adversary. Some may even say underrated. Now today we are continuing in my series of ranking the warlords, and today, this week, is all about Jinbei, the fishman, the first son of the sea. Jinbei, we love to see him. First, let's start with Jinbei's basic stats. Standing at 301 centimeters or 9 feet and 11 inches tall. Currently 46 years old, born April 2nd, with a bounty of 1,100,000,000 berries, and is currently the helmsman of the Straw Hat Pirates. And now let's get into Jinbei's basic timeline in the story of One Piece. Born 46 years ago in the Ryugu Kingdom, in an orphanage that later became the Fishman District, training at the Fishman Karate Dojo, and as a child achieved his black belt. And love that for Jinbei. He was always very, like I said at the beginning of this video, very strong adversary. But that's all we know of his childhood as of now. And around 15 years before the current storyline in One Piece, he was a part of the Neptune army, being a very strong hype man for Fishmen and Fishman Island as a whole. And he doesn't take any bullshit, and that includes the people of his own kind, other fishermen. And in his very young adult years around this time, Fisher Tiger returns to Fishman Island, and after finding out Fisher Tiger actually attacked Marijois, freeing a bunch of slaves, Jinbei resigns from the Neptune army and joins the Sun Pirates. This ultimately changes Jinbei because later on we see him beating up Marines, you know, really violently as the fishmen travel around the world. Fisher Tiger goes on to teach Jinbei not to stoop to the levels of the humans, reminding him that their goal is to free the oppressed. And a few years later, the Sun Pirates visit a random island, and here was Koala, and the people of this island ask the fishmen to take her back to her home, where she belongs. And as they arrive to her home, they are ambushed by Marines led by Strawberry, and Fisher Tiger actually gets very injured during this whole debacle, leading him to later on telling his crew that no matter what he does or how hard he tries, he still hates humans, and telling them about his past as a slave, rejecting a blood infusion from the humans, and he dies soon after this. And after Fisher Tiger dies and Arlong is captured, Jinbei becomes the pirate captain of the Sun Pirates. They go on to do more piratey things, but still not killing anybody, living in Fisher Tiger's dream, okay? His will, basically. And his bounty rose to 250 million berries, and around this time, he was invited to be a part of the Warlords. This was huge. This was huge for Fishman Island. It was huge. Knowing this would strengthen the relationship between the Fishmen and the humans, and this whole deal that went down of Jinbei joining the Warlords actually gets Arlong freed. But this sends both of them even more farther apart because Arlong feels as if Jinbei is selling out, and they go on to have a squabble, and Jinbei wins, and they both go their separate ways. And soon after this, on Fishman Island, a world noble appears, and a few former slaves go on to try to kill this world noble, ultimately being stopped by Orihime, who actually was later threatened by this world noble, and she ends up setting it all good, like everything's good for now, and she ends up going to the surface to politic with the world nobles, world government, whatever. And soon after her return, madness ensues on Fishman Island. The signatures are ablaze, and Orihime ends up getting shot and dying, and Horty Jones blames this on a human, but Jinbei tells him not to say anything because he still is trying to keep not only Fisher Tiger's dream alive at this point, but also Orihime's dream of being real close-knit with the world government. And 2 years before the start of the series, Jinbei actually tries to stop a fight between Ace and Whitebeard, who protected Fishman Island at the time, and Ace and Jinbei go on to strengthen their relationship and grow together as friends. This is where Jinbei finds out actually about Luffy and Arlong's defeat. And soon after this, Ace is captured and Jinbei refuses to fight the Whitebeard pirates. He doesn't want to fight alongside his other warlord buddies. So he is also sent to Impel Down with Ace. They were in the same cell. Ace goes on to tell him great stories about Luffy, really hyping this interaction up between Luffy and Jinbei. But soon after this, Ace is actually taken to Marineford. And Jinbei ends up meeting Luffy soon after this, trying to break out Ace, and they all escape the prison in a huge riot, making their way to Marineford. And arriving at Marineford, Jinbei reassures Luffy that saving Ace is the #1 priority. And he goes on to save all the Devil Fruit users that fell into the sea during their entrance, shouting to Sengoku that he will be resigning as a warlord. This was an aura moment for me because it's just like, it was kind of just like when the Straw Hats in Eni's lobby shooting down the flag, like you are telling the world government you are going against what they have to say. Love that for Jinbei. And throughout the war, he is seen fighting a lot of marine fodder and Moria and stuff. And we get a lot of reactions from him as he is watching the actions of Marineford play out. And later on in the war, Luffy actually asks Jinbei to throw him where Ace is being held at. And this scene is so iconic. Not only for Luffy, of course, that is such an iconic scene. Everybody loves that scene. But it's really Jinbei that gets him up there. I love seeing that. It was really one of the first times we see Jinbei really underwater in action. I love to see it. And it's later seen helping Luffy and Ace try to escape the battlefield. But we all know, unfortunately, Ace doesn't make it. And Jinbei actually ends up blocking Akainu's punch from hitting Luffy and Ace's dead body. Once again, aura from Jinbei building this relationship between him and Luffy. And Marco ends up telling Jinbei to run, taking Luffy with him and running. But Akainu catches up with Jinbei and hits Jinbei so crazily as Jinbei is trying to protect Luffy in this moment. Once again, love to see this for Jinbei and Luffy. The relationship is just growing stronger and stronger. But suddenly, Crocodile sends a sand attack towards Akainu, and this sends Jinbei and Luffy up into the air, and they are caught by Buggy. And Buggy gives Jinbei and Luffy to Law, and they end up escaping in bad shape. But they are treated by Law and crew, and later Jinbei wakes up thanking Law. In 2 weeks after the war, as Luffy is waking up, he goes on a rampage, but is stopped by Jinbei, and this brings Jinbei to tears, asserting dominance over Luffy in a way, reminding him, yes, you can be sad over Ace, but remember, you haven't lost everything. And this is one of the reasons that I respect Jinbei so much. He's really the one that got Luffy out of that funk, you know what I'm saying? And it's very respectable. You know, this grown man, you know, he doesn't owe Luffy nothing, although him and Whitebeard and Ace were really good and friends and really close. He still doesn't owe Luffy nothing, but he really felt for this situation, and I respect that. I do. And soon after this, we see Jinbei and Luffy and company going back to Marineford to ring the Oxbell. And after this, they go their separate ways, with Jinbei going back to Fishman Island, awaiting Luffy's arrival. And at some point during the time skip, this is where Jinbei comes into contact with Big Mom and decides to create a sort of alliance. And this is where Big Mom puts Fishman Island under her belt, as Jinbei is working under her as a subordinate of the Big Mom pirates. And later we see Jinbei residing in the sea forest of Fishman Island, still waiting for Luffy, and Luffy eventually ends up coming to Fishman Island, and he gives Luffy a rundown of the recent history of Fishman Island. And after the flashback, Luffy wants to go fight Porty Jones, who is currently reigning terror over Fishman Island. But Jinbei says that would be a bad idea, because to see a fishman and a human fighting would cause more separation between humans and fishmen, and says that Luffy would have to fight him if this is what he wanted to do. So the two go on to spar for a bit, being stopped by Robin, telling them that friends should not fight. And Jinbei makes his way over to Gynocord Plaza to save the king, allowing himself to be captured. It's all part of the plan that they have going on here on Fishman Island. Finding out that it was actually Porty Jones that killed Orihime, and they begin to fight. And during this fight, we see him fighting a bunch of Porty's crew, and even roundhouse kicking Warutsumi. Sanji and Jinbei end up teaming up to defeat him. And after Luffy eventually beats Porty Jones, Luffy is left battered and loses a bunch of blood, where Jinbei offers to give him a blood transfusion. And this is a huge moment, not only for the Fishman Island arc and Luffy and Jinbei's relationship, but humans and fishmen. That relationship needs more progress, and this was huge for that. All the fishmen, people seeing how much Luffy helped, and Jinbei offering his blood and Luffy accepting it. It's big. And Luffy offers Jinbei to join his crew, but Jinbei refuses, saying that he has other business, unfinished business to take care of, and after that unfinished business, he will join. And during the celebration of the Fishman Island arc, Jinbei goes on to tell the Straw Hats about the world and how everything has changed in the last 2 years. And he is seen speaking to Neptune about being scared of what Big Mom will do to Fishman Island if he leaves her crew. But Luffy steps up and says, Fishman Island is my territory. And it quite literally is. He liberated Fishman and, well, Fishman Island. He deserves this territory. And then Jinbei and the others from Fishman Island bid their farewells to the Straw Hat crew, and they once again go their separate ways. And during the events of Dressrosa, Jinbei is actually seen taking Caribou up to the surface, leaving him in the hands of Commodore Yarosiji. And soon after this, Jinbei goes on a solo adventure, helping a little sea kitten get back to its home. And after seeing their home in ruins and finding out who the culprits were, it was a bunch of sea monsters and Warutsumi. And after saving the village from Warutsumi and the sea monsters, they actually give Jinbei a poneglyph, where he leaves the village in peace, making his way to Big Mom's island. But before arriving to Whole Cake, he actually links up with his crew and informs them that he plans on leaving the Sun Pirates to join the Straw Hats. And he finally arrives to Whole Cake and ends up giving her that poneglyph that we just were talking about, and later is seen stopping her hunger pangs, and he needs to talk to Big Mom about something big, and it's him leaving the crew. Saying he must spin the wheel of consequence, he ends up changing his mind, but not really. He ends up telling his crew that he will rebel with Luffy against Big Mom. And 2 days later, he gets to the library where Luffy and Nami are being held freeing them and explaining his current situation. And later he links up with Carrot and Chopper, helping freeing Brook from Big Mom, telling everybody what is actually happening at this wedding, and later link back up with Luffy and now Sanji, suggesting that they start an alliance with Capone Beji to take down Big Mom. And as that battle begins to enrage, Pedro and Jinbei actually release a bunch of copies of Luffy, where then they end up breaking Mother Caramel's picture, and Jinbei tells Big Mom that he's the one that told Luffy this, and this enrages Big Mom even more, doing the iconic scene of life or death. And it doesn't work on Jinbei because he's simply just not scared of Big Mom. And this pisses her off even more, leaving Jinbei to evade her attacks and going on to fight some of the Big Mom pirates. But he ends up escaping the castle, making his way to the northwest of Whole Cake Island. But soon the group makes it all the way back to the Thousand Sunny. But Big Mom is still in hot pursuit, and they end up using a coup de burst to get away from Big Mom, but this does not stop her. She is very persistent. She wants this wedding cake. She wants Luffy's head. She's pissed. And as the chase continues, thanks to Jinbei's beautiful skills as a helmsman, he blocks and evades the waves that are created by Big Mom while she is still chasing them as they are making their way to Cacao Island. And eventually she catches up and actually ends up on the Sunny, attacking Jinbei, sending him into the ocean with Napoleon. Soon returns, hitting her with a Baccarat technique, sending her off the Sunny. This moment right here, this was a standout moment for Jinbei. I'm gonna be real, Jinbei doesn't really have too many standout moments, but this one right here it solidified him for me as a formidable opponent. Anybody that can attack a character like Big Mom or Kaidou, I instantly gain more respect for them, and it was beautifully done. But they soon link up with Sanji and Pudding, sending Big Mom off in another direction with the fire tank pirates who have the wedding cake that she desperately wants so bad. And they end up making it to Cacao Island, rescuing Sanji and Luffy, and they are making their way outside of Totoland. And soon after this, Jinbei is seen diving into the water of Totoland and is helping fend off the Big Mom pirates with the rest of the Sun pirates so that the Thousand Sunny and the crew can escape. And this is where we get that iconic scene of Luffy saying, "I'll meet you in Wano," or something like that. It's something along those lines. But it's iconic and it stands out. It's a moment for sure. And soon after this, Jinbei and the rest of the Sun pirates end up escaping and making their way down to the water. And this is where the rest of the Sun pirates tell Jinbei to go do his big one. Okay, go join the Straw Hats, do what you want to do. And it's just like, this is a moment right here where I'm just like, I don't understand. But we'll talk about it more at the end of the video. Let's just keep going. Now we're on Wano. We're jumping ahead to the day of the Fire Festival. This is where Jinbei reunites with the Straw Hats, and it's off the coast of Onigashima. A moment here, you know, the crew together at last, the whole crew, mind you. And this is the first time, well, Jinbei just joined the crew, so the crew has already been together, but like, it's a moment, okay? Ready for the raid on Onigashima. And when they arrive to Onigashima, Jinbei is seen hiding the Sunny, and it makes sense because he's the helmsman. And him and Robin go on to infiltrate the performance floor, where they actually throw Big Mom off of the performance floor. W's. I'm saying, if anyone can injure an Emperor of the Sea, not even injure, just like attack them without like anything behind it, like, I don't give a fuck like that. I like that. Okay, so this is W, Jinbei, and Robin. But Jinbei goes on to fight a bunch of fodder here, but later is seen escorting Luffy to the rooftop, fighting fodder along the way. But Jinbei stays behind to keep the fodder at bay, and is soon confronted by Who's Who. And they begin to spar, and then Who's Who goes on to spill about his past and the gum gum fruit. This is where we learn about the gum gum fruit and stuff, the lore behind it. And not all of the lore, but this was the biggest drop of the gum gum fruit that we've had in a very long time. So this moment was a standout moment, and the fact that it was Jinbei that heard about this, W. And Jinbei has a good fight on his hands. This was a great fight to watch personally. Who's Who put up a good fight, but Jinbei goes on to break his wrist, stepping on his tail, finishing him off, and he wins the fight. Like I said, this fight was fun. It was a great watch, okay? And as someone who like kind of says that Jinbei really doesn't have big moments, this was one of those moments. Not to say Who's Who is like the deciding factor of the Wano raid, but he was still a strong opponent, and it's great to watch. And throughout the rest of the raid, Jinbei is seen helping his allies, and W Jinbei, it makes sense. It's Jinbei, he's a good guy. But MVP moment from not only Jinbei, but Raizo. Okay, Raizo was one of those characters where I was just like, what the fuck? I couldn't get behind Raizo. I didn't see him do anything crazy, most like the rest of the scabbards, I'm not gonna lie. But like Raizo in particular, I hated him, to be honest. Not hated him, just a strong dislike, okay? But this pair goes on to do one of the craziest things, I think, in my opinion. It's just like, wow. Raizo pulls out a scroll and releases a bunch of water that he captured back on Zunesha when Zunesha was flooding its back. Jinbei goes on to waterbend all this water. It was a lot of fucking water. And it puts out all the fires throughout all the floors in the Onigashima castle. It was peak. I'm sorry, we have to give it to these two for who they are. I'm sorry, Jinbei. I'm sorry, Raizo. But just like, the moments weren't there, and then they give us this. I'm just like, oh my god. I was rooting for my boys at this point now. And as the raid ends and the people decide to throw a banquet, Jinbei is the only one that shows up to this banquet, while the rest of the Straw Hats are, you know, in the city going crazy, having a good party or whatever. But this really just shows Jinbei's character. You know, he's very serious. He's very serious about what he wants to do and just things like this. I don't know why, but that sticks out to me when it comes to Jinbei's character. Him being on time, ready, while the others are just doing what they're doing. And a few days later, the crew sets sail, ending the Wano arc, and Jinbei becoming a full-fledged member of the Straw Hat Pirates as the helmsman. And as they approach Egghead, they are talking about the going-ons outside of Wano, what happened outside of Wano while they were there. And not too long after this, Jinbei goes after Luffy, who is going after Chopper, who flew off the ship as they were watching Bonnie drowned in the sea. That was a moment, okay? I'm not gonna lie, because now Jinbei is like this character, okay? This is what he does, okay? If one of the devil fruit users fall into the sea, Jinbei needs to be the one that goes and gets them. You know, he's a fishman. It makes sense. But Jinbei goes on to save all of them, of course, making their way to a cave on the outskirts of Wano, like the sewer system, and they end up on the island where they explore just a little bit while the other Straw Hats are finding their way to the island as well. Having run-ins with the Pacifista, Atlas, and even Stella, the real Vegapunk. And that's really it for Jinbei. He doesn't do anything crazy. I mean, he does have the moment where he goes and gets Zoro, and he attacks Lucci, okay? That shit's crazy. That's honestly crazy. I will give him that. But for the most part, he's seen, you know, learning the knowledge that everybody else is learning and stuff like that. Nothing crazy from Jinbei on Egghead for the rest of Egghead, okay? They escape, making their way to Elbaf. And they're having a banquet on the Giant's ship. And after the banquet they have, everyone passes out, and the OG Straw Hats are missing, leaving Jinbei, Frankie, Brooke, Robin on the Great Eric, continuing on their way to Elbaf. And when they arrive to Elbaf, the Giants go on to tell the these Straw Hats, the newer generation of Straw Hats, let's call them that since we're calling the other ones OG, the Giants go on to explain their current situation in the recent history of elbaf. And the new gen goes on to explore a little bit of elbaf, and they eventually link back up with the OG Straw Hat. And this is where they go and see Robin and Saul reunite, which it's not a moment for Jinbei, but it is a moment for the whole crew to see this happen. We all know, I don't know if Jinbei knows all the history. He probably does at this point between Saul and Robin, so it's a moment. And the crew ends up going their separate ways to explore more of elbaf. And at this point, the Giants are enamored by Jinbei because they've never seen a fishman. And Jinbei goes on to tell them about his culture and Fishman Island. I like this right here. Jinbei is so happy. He's a good fisherman. He loves being a fisherman. Okay, I love that for Jinbei, because shout out to the fishermen. We're not racist here. Okay. And later, Jinbei's group goes on to arrive to the school, which was being attacked. He then uses Umi, Gummo, and Panzio, throwing water to put out the fires, saving the children. This is a moment. This is a moment for Jinbei. I love seeing this, okay? But I want more. I need more. But then Gunko comes and puts down Jinbei's entire group, okay? And at this point, when I was writing this, that was it for Jinbei. We haven't seen much. But as of recent, what is happening with Jinbei, he is being discriminated against by one of the Holy Knights, and that's killing him. But Sanji goes off to behead, killing him, handing Jinbei his head. Hello? That is a moment. Love to see it. W Jinbei and his culture, but really W Sanji. Now that is the last we've seen of Jinbei as of now, 1179. That is where the manga is currently. And before I give my ranking and my predictions for Jinbei, I want to give my little thoughts on Jinbei. Okay, I love Jinbei. I really do. And I definitely think that the Straw Hats need a fishman, but I don't think Jinbei should be on the Straw Hats crew. I'm just saying. He could have went two ways, okay? The first way could have been staying the captain of the Sun Pirates and really holding it down in Fishman Island, because Fishman Island is a big target, not only by the government, but now you did this with Big Mom and stuff, and you guys are just leaving it unattended. And I don't think that there's anyone on Fishman Island that can really give somebody a good fight if it comes down to it. But Jinbei could. Jinbei is a strong, once again, formidable opponent, and I'm not taking that away from him whatsoever. I just think he belonged somewhere else. Now, the second way he could have went was to join the Revolutionary Army. I could see this totally being a possibility. The revolutionaries are trying to free the people of the One Piece planet little by little, okay? Jinbei is a part of a culture that needs freeing, you know, that needs more respect on the surface level. Yes, they are invited to the reveries and stuff, but still, people treat fishermen like shit. They do. Okay, and I feel like he would fit so perfectly with Dragon and Ivankov and Kuma when he was a part of the Revolutionary Army. He basically dropped all his friends to sail around with people that are half his age. Hello? And this is why at the beginning of the video I called Jinbei a contradiction, because it's just like, you show so much loyalty to Luffy. Where is this loyalty to your people? Okay, and once again, not to shit on him, because I think Jinbei is very skilled at what he does. I just don't think he should be on the Straw Hats. But I'm done shitting on Jinbei. I really am, okay? Let's get into some Jinbei predictions. Like I said, he is formidable, and we will see Jinbei go on to fight more crazy. I'm hoping, that's what I'm hoping for, to fight more in crazy, you know, villains at this point, you know. But like, I also think that he will unlock Conqueror's Haki, because he needs it. Okay, to be compared to Sanji, your bounty is higher than Sanji's. I'm pretty sure, right? Yeah, your bounty is higher than Sanji's, on par with Zoro's, and you're on Luffy's crew. You need to be strong. You got to be. And he is strong, but is he strong enough to fight Holy Knights? You know what I'm saying? But eventually, I kind of see what I was just saying happening. Jinbei leaves the Straw Hats. This is one of my biggest predictions. I think Jinbei will, and he should, leave the Straw Hats. They need a different helmsman. I'm sorry. They do. They just do. Like that. Jinbei's not... I'm gonna sound bad, but I just don't think he fits the aesthetic of the Straw Hats. Not that the Straw Hats fucking need an aesthetic, or that they even have one, okay? Because you have Big Frankie here, and everybody else is just small, petite. Not to shit on the big characters. I'm a big guy myself. I just don't think they need Jinbei. I don't. And now for my ranking for Jinbei, I'm going to give Jinbei a solid B. I wrote down that he didn't really move the story much, but that's a lie. He saved Luffy on, you know, Marineford and stuff like that, but I need to see more from Jinbei. If Jinbei is going to stay on this crew, he's going to be the helmsman, we have to respect it. I need to see more from him. I need to see why the fuck you're on the crew. And once again, I mean, I could say he saved Luffy on Marineford, of course. But I still need and want more from Jinbei. But let me know what you think. Where would you rate Jinbei as a warlord against the other warlords? The blood son of Whitebeard. The tempered rage of a suffering individual. The most questionable warlord of the sea. Today, we will be getting into my ranking for Edward Weevil. Okay, I know, once again, very questionable, but he's still a warlord, so he's a part of this. If I did a Hanafuda ranking, Weevil's definitely up there. Okay, now let's start off with Weevil's basic stats. Currently 35 years old, born December 10th, standing at 680 centimeters or 22 feet 4 centimeters tall. Big boy. That's a big boy. That's the big guy. Big guy. With an even bigger bounty of 480 million berries, born somewhere on the Grand Line. Now, that's most of what we know about Weevil. We don't know if he has a devil fruit or any of that other good stuff. So now it's time for Weevil's basic timeline in the story. Born 35 years ago, somewhere on the Grand Line, to the mother of Buckingham Stussy. We don't know much about his childhood or younger years. We literally know nothing. But sometime during his adulthood years, Stussy and him proclaim that he is indeed the son of Whitebeard. But no one in the One Piece universe believes this. Even some fans don't believe this, and it's heavily questioned as the authenticity of this claim. But Weevil obviously had some type of motion and power because he was invited to be a warlord of the sea. And this was during the time skip, and he accepted this offer. And during the time skip, Weevil actually defeats like 15 pirate crews that were actually served under Whitebeard in order to get Whitebeard's treasure that was promised to him by Stussy. Now, what does this remind you? I'm not going to say what it reminds me of, but you see it. And I think that's why the fans really question Weevil's authenticity, because it's like, this is your dad, you know, and from what we see, Weevil really respects Whitebeard. Why are you fucking with people that served under him? Let's just keep it moving. And during the events of Zhao and Whole Cake, Weevil goes on to defeat the AO pirates, and soon after this, Stussy tells him that they need to go find Marco in order to claim Whitebeard's fortune. But Weevil at this point is more focused on, he wants to get revenge or vengeance on Blackbeard for killing his father. And this is when my thoughts were changed on Weevil, because maybe he is Whitebeard's son, you know, and Stussy is the one that's really at the wheel, and it's pretty obvious at this point that that's what's happening, because she is the one who talks him out of it and informs him about the Straw Hat Pirates and Doflamingo's defeat, and he suggests that they go after them to get information on Marco. And during the Wano incident, the Warlord system is abolished, okay? And Weevil and Stussy are confronted by Marines, because the world government just looks at them as regular pirates. They offer them nothing, and so now they're criminals again. And Weevil takes them out with ease, and they eventually make their way to Shanks Island, which was Whitebeard's homeland, and Weevil goes on to defend it while Marco is in Wano helping defeat Kaido and Big Mom. Now, Shanks Island is also under attack by Marines, but Weevil once again takes them out with ease, defeating the squad leader Rattel and forcing them to call for backup, which caused Green Bull to pop up, taking out Weevil and arresting him, taking him to prison. And this is the last we see of Edward Weevil in the story currently. Now, before I get into my ranking and my predictions for Weevil, I want to just give my little thoughts on Weevil here. Personally, I think he's a very forgettable character. I'm not going to lie. It's not because he's only been seen a handful of times. Let's say Kaido or Doflamingo. Doflamingo was seen a bunch of times, you know, before he was actually introduced, but you still looked at him like, whoa, this guy's serious, he means business. Now, I'm not saying Weevil's not strong, he's just uninteresting, okay? And there's a few characters that are mentioned or seen a few times before their actual introduction, but I don't care when it comes to Weevil. I don't care to see more of his story, more of his plot line, but that could 100% change for me personally if he does have a big moment. Okay, now let's get into some Weevil predictions. Now, he will get a big moment. I definitely see it for him. It's not over for Weevil. He's not just gonna rot in prison forever. I definitely see him having a moment, but I don't think that this moment will be big or great enough to save the character. I'm just saying, I just think that his character is just a nuisance. Okay. Okay, so I want to add this prediction real quick. Ignore the man talking in the background, I'm sorry, but I want to add that Weevil might come out of prison looking, might I say, handsome-ish. Because, okay, so if you remember what happened with Shinobu and the other people that were on Wano when Green Bull attacked them, he turned them all like skinny and like this, especially Shinobu looking bad as shit. So like I feel like Weevil could come out looking pretty handsome. So yeah, I wanted to add that little bonus prediction here. Enjoy the rest of the video. But don't count him out just yet. I'm not even counting him out just yet. I don't mean to keep shitting on him, because another prediction I have for Weevil is that his character is just a tool to give us big information on something or someone. Now, that something could be clone information. Stussy is a old woman when she's with Weevil, but there's another version of Stussy that is a part of the CP0 organization, but she was like a flip-flop and she was with Vegapunk. We don't know much about this clone situation, so I think his character could definitely lead us to more information on that. And that someone could be Whitebeard, his father, obviously, and I think it would be about his Whitebeard's treasure, and that is what could wake it up for me for Whitebeard, or not Whitebeard, Weevil. But how would he get it? He's in prison right now, and this is a prediction for another character I have, Kaido. I don't think Kaido's dead. I think Kaido will cause a riot similar to what Luffy did in Impel Down and free, not intentionally, but he will free a lot of characters that are currently being held in Impel Down, and one of those characters will be Weevil, and he'll go on to get his father's treasure, okay? Leaving him off with a low-key a good story plot line for him. Now, my ranking for Weevil is a solid C. The only reason I don't give him a D is because of the potential, very potential, that he may have some information that we could find interesting or useful. Like I said, I think he'll lead us to something, whether that be about clone, Whitebeard's treasure, or Whitebeard information that itself. Whatever it is, I don't think it'll be that good for Weevil to rise him above or lower him anywhere else. I think a solid C is perfect for Weevil. Arguably one of the saddest stories in all of One Piece. The most unexpected lore that makes you fall in love with a character. Walk with me. Today, we are getting back into my Ranking the Warlords series, and this week is all about the tragedy of Bartholomew Kuma. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh my god. This story makes me sick to my stomach, I'm not gonna lie. So let's just get into it, okay? Let's start with Kuma's basic stats. Bartholomew Kuma is currently 47 years old. Born February 9th on an island called Sorbet Kingdom in the South Blue, the current user of the pawpaw fruit, allowing him to take out memories, emotions, and even pain, making them into physical objects. Also able to send people across the planet with a shockwave attack. For the most part, this is very much harmless, okay? It doesn't really hurt the person unless he is trying to. Standing at 689 centimeters or 22 feet 7 inches tall, with a bounty of 296 million berries. Now let's get into the basic timeline for Kuma. Born 47 years ago in the Sorbet Kingdom to the father of Clap and an unnamed mother. And the mother was human while Clap was a part of the Buccaneer race, which made Kuma a hybrid and putting a target on his back. Because 4 years after his birth, government agents went to go track down this family, enslaving them for most of Kuma's childhood. And during this time, unbeknownst to Kuma, his mother died, as they were separated when they first got there, kind of like Germany 1940s, situation, breaking the young Kuma's heart to the point where he also wanted to die. This is what I'm saying. This shit makes me so sick, genuinely, and I can't even fake it. But Clap tries to make Kuma feel better by telling him about the warrior Nika and how the legend will come and save the oppressed of the world, including them. And during this beautiful moment in a sad case, we get the most tragic, I think this is the most tragic scene in One Piece of all time. It just is. It's right up there with Nami's backstory and shit. But Clap gets shot right in the back of the head, right in front of Kuma, as Kuma is smiling because he's dancing with his dad. And here comes this world noble and just fucks him in the back of the head. It's nuts. It's nuts. There's blood all over Kuma's face. It is such a sad moment. I can't. I cannot rewatch it. The one time was good enough for me. I'm never rewatching Kuma's backstory for the simple fact that it was too fucked up. And I think it's more personal for me because young Kuma looks sinisterly similar to my young nephew. I couldn't watch it. I almost had to turn it off. I've never almost had to turn something off before, because it was just that. I don't know. Am I just getting older and it's just fuck? That shit was fucked up. But eventually, not too long after this, Kuma was transferred to God Valley for the native hunting competition. And here on God Valley, he ends up meeting Emporio, Ivankov, and Ginny, and Ivankov comes up with a plan of escaping by stealing the devil fruits that will be prizes for the hunters of this competition. And as the events of God Valley begin to play out, they go forward with their plan, ultimately being interrupted by Big Mom. But Kuma ends up getting his devil fruit, and then Saint Saturn appears, KOing the young Kuma, telling him about the Buccaneers and how they committed a crime way back when, and they are just born to be slaves. But Kuma manages to escape the area and ends up saving Blackbeard and his mother Eris and 500 other slaves on God Valley. With his newfound power of his devil fruit, he uses that shockwave attack that we were talking about earlier, sending Ivankov and Ginny back to his homeland of Sorbet Kingdom, ending the nightmare that was God Valley. Back on Sorbet Kingdom, Kuma and Ginny decide to make the church their own, while Ivankov plans to travel the seas. The two go on to sell logs to be able to afford food, living out the rest of their childhood on Sorbet Kingdom, taking pride in their newfound freedom. And 30 years ago, at the age of 17, Kuma becomes a priest, spending his free time helping the needy of Sorbet Kingdom, literally taking these people's emotions and making them his own, healing them in the process. And Ginny was there to help Kuma through all of this. And 5 years after this, Ginny proposes the idea of marriage to Kuma, but this takes Kuma by surprise, ultimately turning it down because he knows what will happen if he marries a regular human and he is a buccaneer. He doesn't want Ginny to end up like his mother. And around this time, he became aware of Monkey D. Dragon. And 22 years ago, Kuma is seen protesting a new policy put in place by King Bakori, making the south of Sorbet Kingdom a lawless land, which led to a fight between Kuma and the Royal Sorbet Army, who then imprisoned Kuma, Ginny, and company. But soon after this, Ivankov and Monkey D. Dragon make their way to the island, invading it and overthrowing the tyrant that was King Bakori. And Kuma and Ginny go on to join this faction, but Kuma's heart is ultimately in Sorbet Kingdom, so he travels there every now and then to check on the residents and help them out if needed. Now, 14 years ago, Ginny was actually captured and forced to be a wife to a world noble. Kuma, being through this himself, really felt for the situation and made Kuma even more formidable than he already was. And for 2 years, Kuma and the rest of the Revs go on to do their revolutionary thing that they do. And at the end of the 2 years, Ginny ends up escaping Marineford, and she manages to make contact with the Revs, telling them that she is dying from the sapphire disease that she has, and Kuma starts tweaking in this motherfucker. And by the time he figures out her location, she has died already. And making it to her, he sees that she has a baby in her arms, taking Jewelry Bonnie and adopting her as his own, and will raise her in the honor of Ginny, because Ginny was there through most of it. She wasn't there for the early parts of his childhood, but she was there for the aftermath of it, you know, and going on to help with the residents of Sorbet and stuff like that. That was really his closest friend, okay? And for the next few years, Kuma goes on to do his revolutionary thing, managing to make time for Bonnie so she can have a great childhood, unlike him. And around this time, he was noted to help Sabo train with the revolutionaries. But soon after this, he resigns as a revolutionary to give more time for Bonnie and tend to her health, as she also contracted the sapphire disease. And for the next few years, he goes on to try to find a cure for the disease and keeping Bonnie in good spirits. But about a year later, back on Sorbet, King Bakori returns. Back on his same old antics, and Kuma goes on to shit on him and his army, as he should. Kuma is a legend, a fucking icon. This event will go on to be known as Sorbet's Solo Revolution. And the people of Sorbet rejoice, and they want Kuma as their king. And he accepts, but soon has to resign because King Bakori, I'm so tired of this character, not gonna lie, is running his mouth to the world government and stuff like that. So Kuma decides that it'd be best for him to leave Sorbet. And while out on the sea, he runs in to Bakori's armada, the whole armada, and takes them out once again with ease. This event is what caused Kuma to be known as a wanted pirate. He goes on to sail the world by himself looking for a cure for Bonnie's disease, to no avail. But 4 years ago, he runs back into the Revolutionary Army, and he's catching up with Dragon about what's been going on in his life. Dragon, finding out about Bonnie's situation, he gives Kuma information on Dr. Vegapunk, which leads Kuma to immediately leave, go back to Sorbet, get Bonnie, and take her to Vegapunk. Vegapunk agrees to help Kuma and Bonnie as long as Kuma gives Vegapunk enough blood to make clones of him, because Vegapunk ends up going to find out that Kuma is a buccaneer. Okay, T. And the Pacifista project begins, and it's named after Kuma because Kuma claims to be a pacifist. Not even a claim, this is true. But unbeknownst to both Kuma and Vegapunk, Saint Saturn was listening to this whole ordeal and sends Kizaru to intervene. But Saint Saturn realizes that having Kuma on the world government side could be an asset. But Kuma had to agree to 3 terms, or it was donezo for Bonnie and him. Become a warlord of the sea, and becoming a cyborg, removing free will and personality from Kuma. And finally, he cannot meet Bonnie post-procedure, as it could lead to betrayal. And Kuma accepts this without a second thought, as he just wants the best for Bonnie. And for the next few months, him and Bonnie stay on Egghead to have things done for Bonnie, and eventually took Bonnie back to Sorbet one last time, leaving her in the care of Queen Connie, promising he'll write her tons of letters, bidding farewell to his daughter. And he went on to go back to Vegapunk for the beginning stages of him becoming a cyborg, and soon becomes a warlord officially. And Vegapunk asked Kuma to repel his own memories so they could be studied. And in his early years as a warlord, he goes on to visit tons of new islands and describes them all to Bonnie in letters. And around this time, he actually encounters a younger Luffy. And soon after this, he returns back to Egghead for his final modifications to become a cyborg. And he should lose his personality and free will within a year. And around the time of the Arlong Park incident, he finds out about Luffy's bounty for the first time. And during the events of Sky Island, he and the other warlords are summoned to speak on Crocodile's defeat. And now during the events of Water 7 / Enies Lobby, he returns back to Egghead, and he is very uncomfortable by his clones, the Pacifista. And during this visit, this is when Vegapunk tells Kuma about Luffy declaring war on the world government. And this is where Kuma kind of like puts 2 and 2 together, but he's unsure about Luffy being this Nika character that he believes in so much, that has helped him through so many obstacles in life. He's becoming intrigued by Luffy. And now we move on to Thriller Bark, Kuma's true introduction to us. Kuma comes to inform Moria of Crocodile's replacement being interrupted by Perona, where he sends her away from Thriller Bark. He ends up finding Moria and tells him about Blackbeard joining the Warlord system. warning him of Luffy's crew and asked if he wants help in defeating them. That would have turned the tides. But Moria says no, he's good, leaving Moria to get cooked by Luffy. Shout out Luffy and Nightmare Luffy, iconic. Kuma witnessed this and goes back to the world government, informing them on what happened, and they tell him to go back and kill any witnesses that were on the island, including the Straw Hats. So he goes back to Thriller Bark and he eventually meets the Straw Hats, where the Straw Hats attack, but Luffy is still down and out at the moment. He takes out Frankie and Sanji with ease and is left with Zoro, giving Zoro an ultimatum, either taking Luffy's head or Zoro suffers the pain of Luffy, and nothing happened. Zoro obviously agrees to this without a second even thought, and that is a loyal crew right there. Zoro is one of the most loyal companions to Luffy because of this. They're all loyal like that, but I don't know. Would they? Nami did. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's a moment for sure. Okay. And Kuma leaves Thriller Bark, happy that Luffy has a crew that is so dedicated to him. Returning back to Marijois, informing Sengoku and GARP of what happened, and they scold the Warlord. And at some point after this, he finds his way to Sabaody Archipelago, where he is contacted by the world government of the impending war that is about to happen on Marineford. And here on Sabaody, from afar, he watches Bonnie, and this is just such a moment. Like, I know he was so happy, you know what I'm saying? It's just, I love this so much for Kuma. Sorry. Being interrupted by nearby commotion, coming from an auction house nearby, and it's Luffy punching a world noble. Kuma was there for these iconic moments on the Straw Hat. For the Straw Hats, you know, I love that for him. But this ultimately shocked Kuma, as you're not supposed to lay a finger or even look at the world nobles, you know. And during the fight with Sentomaru and Kizaru versus the Straw Hats, Kuma steps in, sending the pacifista away and all of the Straw Hats away from Sabaody, in order to save the person who he feels like could possibly save the world. But that person and his crew need to train, which they did and became stronger on different islands. And before he leaves for Egghead, he goes and visits Rayleigh, where he informs him that he doesn't have that much time left. And this is huge, okay? When we see this in the Kuma's flashback, it's just like, he saved Luffy's life. That's real, okay? Maybe they would have gotten away, but very, one of them was gonna die, okay? That's all I'm saying. And it's such a huge moment to push Luffy forward, and Kuma was the one that did it. Just remember that. And back on Egghead, this is his final visit, becoming fully cyborg, telling Vegapunk to make his final directive to protect the Thousand Sunny until the Straw Hats return to it. And now at this point, the Kuma that we grew to love and respect is officially gone. And during the events of Amazon Lily, Kuma shows up to Marijois in preparation for Marineford. And at Marineford, he clashes with Fodder, Orange Jr., and even Ivankov for a second. And this is where his old friend Ivankov, who initially saved Kuma way back on God Valley by giving him a little hope, finds out that that friend that she met so long ago is gone. He's not here anymore. And honestly, he didn't do much on Marineford. First of all, his personality and everything else was gone. So even when there was information being said, like Ace's real dad's name and shit like that, he would just stare blankly off into space because he wasn't there. And after the war, making his way back to Sabaody. And during the time skip, he keeps his promise by keeping the Thousand Sunny safe until the Straw Hats came, and he did for 2 years, being wounded in the process, but eventually Frankie shows up, and Kuma silently leaves, silently making his way back to Marijois. And on Marijois, during the Whole Cake incident, as punishment for assisting Luffy and his crew, he is put as a slave for rent. And at the time being controlled by Warlord, being stabbed and beaten by the World Noble. And during the events of Wano, Kuma is seen on Marijois and is ordered to kill Shirahoshi, ultimately being stopped by Miosgard. He is another World Noble. And during this moment, this is when the revolutionaries were actually infiltrating Marijois, and Kuma is taken captive by Morley. Escaping Marijois, and a few days later, Saturn goes on to try to flick Kuma's self-destruct switch, but Vegapunk could not do that to Kuma. So instead, he just put in that he would just be in a vegetative state, unable to move, so it would look like he's dead. But I don't know, that's kind of like fucked up too, you know what I'm saying? But ultimately it didn't work. And then we jump over to the events of Egghead, where the Revs are seen moving Kuma to Memorial Island and soon begin repairs on Kuma here. But Kuma begins to escape, propelling himself off the island, slamming into the red line, where he's met by Akainu, and Akainu actually does big damage here to Kuma, taking off a part of his face. But Kuma manages to escape, making his way to Egghead one final time. Arriving on Egghead, he makes his way to the island's center, where Saint Saturn is crushing Bonnie, and when Kuma arrives, Saturn puts one of his nasty spider legs in Kuma's like body, but Kuma pulls out the nasty spider leg, going on to punch the Five Elder. And this is insanery kind of moment, because first of all, it's very reminiscent of Luffy punching the World Noble. Top of that, there was so much behind this punch, okay? Saturn was the one that gave Jenny the sapphire poisoning disease or whatever, which led to her death, which led to Bonnie's imprisonment basically back on Sorbet, which led to Kuma basically becoming a mute cyborg. So it's just like, fuck, there was so much behind it. Not to mention his childhood, you know what I'm saying? So this moment felt so satisfying, and it looked great in the anime as well. And after years apart, he is finally reunited with Bonnie. Such a touching moment. Before escaping Egghead, he actually sees Nika for the first time, and after a long and bumpy journey, Frankie's group makes it to the Great Eric, where Kuma and some of the other Straw Hats and Bonnie stay until everyone arrives. And as the events of Egghead come to an end, they sail off to Elbaf. And on their way to Elbaf, Kuma cracks a smile. To me, this was huge. Okay, it's just like, he was just like, finally, you know what I'm saying? He's reunited with his daughter. His daughter doesn't have this unfortunate disease anymore. It was just a beautiful moment. I'm sorry, I know, because even when it was airing like in the anime, I was just like, fuck, like this is a long flashback. I love One Piece 100 billion times over, and I even love flashbacks, but this one was so dark that it was just like, oh my god, I just wanted it to end. And when it finally ended with him cracking that smile, it felt good. And when they make it to Elbaf, Lilith tells Kuma that they will try to restore Kuma's mind back to what it was. And this is the last time we see Kuma in the story as of right now. And oh my god, what a story. It's just like, it was like an adventure, okay? It was, fuck. But before my predictions and ranking of Kuma, I want to give my thoughts here on Kuma real quick. His story is just, it's so deeply woven. He's connected to so many characters in the story. You gotta respect the journey. From losing his only family, losing the love of his life, being forced to become a cyborg, and he will still to this day sacrifice himself for the ones he loves. I mean, he's more fleshed out than some of the Straw Hats. I'm just gonna be real. And it's so greatly written too. It was just so compelling. And I always say, if you feel something from a movie, a song, a book, a show, an anime, a manga, whatever, if you feel that, if you feel the emotion that they're trying to give you, it's great. It's great. That's the point. They're trying to move you, and I was moved personally. And I want to say he's the best written character in One Piece, but there's just too many. But he's right up there in the top 10. I don't give a fuck. Argue with my fist. I'm sorry. Now for my Kuma predictions. We will see Kuma again in the story. It is not over for his character, and he will get his mind right. I see it for his character, and it might take a while, but I do see it happening. But another prediction I have, if he remembers what was going on, like during the time where he was shut down, whatever was going on in his mind, I wonder if he remembered what was happening. And if he did, I feel like he has information on the world government that could be useful in the end war, the final saga. And finally, eventually, I see Kuma and Bonnie finally living out their lifelong dream of sailing around the world to different islands together, periodically visiting Sorbet Kingdom in the process. Kuma has to have a happy ending. He has to, because if Oda didn't kill him and he kills him now or something like that, it would just be bad. So I feel like he has to have a happy ending with his daughter. And I will give Kuma the rank of A+. Now, hear me out. This ranking system that I've been doing with these warlords, it has a lot, like it depends on a lot, like your story, your intentions, if you've helped Luffy, the main character of One Piece. And not only did he save Luffy, he saved the entire crew. And also his story, he's so well written, and like I said, it was compelling. It made you feel for Kuma. I couldn't see him anywhere below an A+, and also he's just strong as fuck and was there for very significant moments throughout the story, not even just for the Straw Hats. He was on God Valley and shit like that. So it's like, you have to respect this character. How can you not love Kuma? I'm sorry. He's one of the purest characters in One Piece, and A+ overall. But I would like to know your thoughts on Kuma and where you would rank him on my ranking list.